All right. It's impossible for me to know if the audio was playing in the beginning because it says it wasn't, but we'll hope that it was. And anyways, sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. There's a ball of fucking molten lava, plasma, fire floating through space that will kill you just as soon as it would provide you with enough warmth to survive. Or is it a fireball at all? What if the sun, source of all life, is something entirely different? Why have cultures since time immemorial worshipped that ball of mystery? These questions and more will be answered in this episode of Rogueways as we explore all things sun-related. I'm your host, Lindsay Sharman, and I'm so grateful you are all here with me tonight. Or with us tonight, I should say. And before we get started, I'm going to thank every single person who is watching or listening or commenting and sharing, because you're some of the best parts of my life and you're the reason why this all keeps happening. I love it. I love this community. And I especially want to thank Kevin Michael and Ryan Peterson, who gave me some love on YouTube through Super Chats recently, and that's why I'm able to do this specific live stream tonight, because we're doing it through Zoom and it hosts as many people as I need for as long as I want, and that is perfect. So thank you so much for supporting that. Anybody who would like to support the show, YouTube Super Chats is a great way. You can give lemons on DLive if you're watching on DLive right now, but you can also donate straight to me at paypal.me/Corey Sharman. Corey Sharman is spelled QUORRISCHARMYN. There's also a link to it on my site, rogueways.org. That's the easiest and best way, because all of that comes straight to me as supporting the show. I'm very grateful for all the donations that help me keep doing things like this. And I'd like to announce that Sasha McDonald is the winner of Sine Curve of Aeons, my novel. Yay, Sasha! I'm super happy that it's going to someone
we
so
love
awesome.
You, Sasha.
Yes. Someone who's been supporting the show for a long time. Totally deserves it. So yay for Sasha, who won the book. I hope to do more giveaways in the future, possibly for merch. So I wanted to show you guys this. If you go to CoreySharman.com, you can also type in rogueways.org. You get to this site. There's a lot here. You can get some tarot reading from me if you would like. I've been doing it for over 20 years. And it's a very safe and protected method that I use that is super helpful. Every single person I've ever given a reading to is very, very happy with that. But I really wanted to show off my new merch, which you can see here. If you want, you can get now t-shirts, sweatshirts. I got phone cases. I got laptop cases. All kinds of stuff. I even have this baby onesie. I'm like super excited about that for some reason. I think it's so cute. There's this mug. There's all kinds of stuff here. So if you want to support me, there's one more way where I get supported and you get cool stuff that you get to keep. So check that out and support the show that way. I appreciate it. Yeah. So finally, anybody who orders off the site by the 1st will be entered to win. We've already got some entries for people who've been participating and sending me their entries for winning this painting by Nick Klein. It's sort of a reddish and a yellowish. I really hate that every time I try to show it, it does not show the color off very well. It's a super beautiful piece by Nick. So there's some people who have entered to win that instead of the book, and that entry, that drawing is still going until the 1st of January. The new year is when I'm going to draw for that. So anybody who orders from the shop by then will also be entered to win. The other ways you can enter to win are by liking and sharing and subscribing to DLive, to the YouTube channel. You can share the site if you want, any of those things, and just send me an email at CoreySharman@gmail.com telling me that you want to enter to win the painting. So I'll do that drawing on the 1st, and I will go live and tell you guys all about who has won. Finally, let me introduce our guest tonight. Bringing it from my home and my heart in the Pacific Northwest, we have the greatest and the baldest of geniuses to ever pour a mean cup of coffee. He will fuck your entire world of cuisine up through pure envy if you let him, and he doesn't even care. The Great Baldini is deep in that wisdom game, and he brings it here tonight in order to slay our minds open. Baldini, thank you for being here today.
Slayer band with the food and the coffee.
Yes.
Well, that was quite an intro. I was like, are you talking about, Ben? But
Like who? What? Is there
well,
another person going to join this chat?
right? Hey, what happened? Hey, no, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
I
much for
love it.
being here.
Yeah, it's an awesome group.
Yay. Also returning to Rogue, opening up portals into the deepest crevices of the root spaces and the highest reaches of the ethereal crown, this wizard will either heal your mind, body, and soul with his alchemical creations and wisdom, or he'll build you an off-grid wonderland and chop off your enemies' heads with his axe, just depending on the day. The original chicken wizard of the foothills under Mount Shasta, my brother, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, is here. Ben, thank you so much for coming back.
How's it going, Lindsay?
It's awesome to have you here.
Oh, it's fantastic. Real excited. I couldn't be more honored to be with the other two speakers right now.
Awesome. And last but best, we have the energy behind keeping Rogueways bucking and jiving, the reason I don't quit every other month, the heart and soul of the entire show, the man of 1,000 talents and the brightest heart, the lady killer who knows that work is actually for suckers, but also money is always going to flow. Brett Sailors, the rock star himself. Brett, thanks for being a badass.
Thank you very much.
All right, so in classic Rogue style, we always start with a pointless question of the episode. And given the time of year, I wanted to ask you guys what your favorite time about this festive time of the year is. And anybody can start.
All right, so Baldini will go first. I'll say alcohol. One of my favorite holiday beverages is, little whiskey and coffee, and start having that at about 8:00 on Christmas morning, and by noon you don't give a shit what Santa brought. Fuck Santa. No, there's a wide variety of alcoholic beverages, from eggnog to hot buttered rum, and the variety of alcoholic beverages, and really everybody can be a lush this time of year and nobody really cares. So I don't drink any more, but I don't drink any less either. So we have that going. Nice.
Excellent. What about you, Ben? What's your favorite time of the festivities?
Well, this is for me. This is Yule, so it lasts quite a bit longer.
Today, right?
Yep. Today would be the Yule start, and then it lasts. And this is all about the return of the sun. It's the sun quits getting less and less and starts getting more and more, and you get the return of it. So life isn't decreasing; it's increasing again. I don't have to run my solar panels generator so much because my solar panels will start actually picking up things again.
Nice.
Yeah, down to real few hours of light a day, and trying to run a lab with that few hours does not work out well. So
just one more example of how we all desperately need the sun. Brett, what about you?
Yes.
What's your favorite part of the festivities?
I just like this time of year because people are generally just a little bit nicer. So people that wouldn't normally make eye contact, they do, or they'll hold a door, just a little bit more pleasant in general. So I tend to like the holidays.
And I see your Christmas tree back
holiday
there.
Spirit. See, the holiday spirit.
Yes, beautiful, right?
Spirits.
The holiday spirit is about sending ghosts to old rich men so that they'll pay people better.
Oh, I was going back to the alcohol, holiday spirits.
Well, so along that same word. So what today? Well, today, tomorrow, and the next day represent is the high etheric, the high feminine. This is, the same as with a plant. Throughout the day, it burns off its oil and becomes more masculine. And when night hits, it starts building its oil and becoming more feminine. Well, this same cycle happens throughout the year.
Well, that makes sense.
So on and so forth. So this is the time that you're in your high ether, when you should be thinking about what you're going to do for the next year, because when the masculine returns with the spring, that's when you go out and you start putting doing the actual labor of it and putting the masculine into it. So this is your high feminine right now.
Which is perfect because that's where we can get the energy to get the ghost to attack the rich people.
Right. Well, it works very much like, and we're going to get into this energetically, but it works very much like when I fill my tube, I vacuum pressure it first. And if I don't do that, if I try to slam fluid into there without vacuuming it down and making a negative pressure, it doesn't pan out. The air pressure will just squish a little bit and then start blasting the pressure backwards. So you've got to get that negative before you can dump that positive into there.
I wanted to also spell it out for anyone who wasn't sure. Yesterday was the official solstice. Today is the day one of the sort of like the sun's, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not moving at all. It's like it's death.
Moving. It quits moving in the one direction. It obviously still goes east and west, but north to south, it quits transitioning.
It's like a stasis. Degrees. It's like a stasis. Yes. It's like there's still the same amount of sun and dark in these next few days, and then on the 24th is when it starts coming back. No, the 25th is when it starts getting actually more daylight. So the sun starts coming back to life. That's when
the sun is born.
The birth of sun, the Son of God. Yes. Yeah. So that's actually, what today is.
So today actually is well, it would be sky clock solstice here in Seattle. So yesterday was 4 minutes short of being perfect equinox, and today is 1 second off. So today is actually, if you do the sky clock, not the official Farmer's Almanac, but if you do the sky clock, today is actually the official, equal sun, daylight, and darkness.
Fantastic.
Here in Seattle. So just 1 second. Yeah, just 1 second.
So
off.
This is the thing, and this comes down to whether or not you're a flat earth or a globe earth sort of person, because when this was all kind of coming out from Crow, at least, and when I first heard it, what was that, like a year or two ago, about the solstices and the equinoxes being inaccurate. I went researching to try to figure out like what that was all about, and it just depends on your idea of what the solstices and the equinoxes are. So if you're just measuring your experience, which you could easily argue is the most valid and the only one that matters, then you're right. But if you're going by what they say is happening in space and the galactic sort of center and how things are like balancing out in the, what is that fucking called? The
ecliptic. Yeah.
The ecliptic. Then it was yesterday for everyone around the world, because it's a galactic experience, not a Earth experience. It is an Earth experience, but do you know what I'm saying? It's when the galactic plane is like lined up with their measure.
It's their measurement of orbital bodies, but
that has nothing to do with how much sun or how much night it does. It's like connected, but
there you go. But if solstice is truly the day of equal light and darkness, then it would be contingent on your position. And you asked about flat or globe, and I'm just a geometric agnostic, right? I don't know.
Even if you're doing the equal, it does have to do with equal day and night, or the largest sun in the north. Even if you're doing the galactic one, it's just not, because wherever you're at can also be affected by like mountains and like topography and stuff as well.
Yeah, this is just daylight, darkness, the day length.
Right. Which would like even on the naval data sites has to do with topography as well, because it's perceived light and night.
Right. And what we're talking about is during one time period, the light is receding. During another time period, the light is gaining. That's what we're talking about. So I don't know why they got to confuse that. And then they take the reality. I understand what they're doing when they try to include everybody with it in a certain date. But then what you do is you take the reality out of it, because now you've made this a more etheric idea that doesn't really hold a reality for people. They don't understand.
Yeah, it's further away from
true meaning behind it.
Right, it's further away from nature, in the same way that a sundial keeps time where you are, right? So, but when you put in the time zones, right, that screws everything up, because now you're jumping by an hour. So solar noon is solar noon. If you're on the edge of the time zone, you could be literally an hour away from that, right? Because you're not solar noon, just because you have, it's the trains that did that, because everybody was arriving at different times, and everybody was before that keeping time with the sun. So I mean, again, I consider myself a geometric agnostic, but I'm certainly want to be as close to nature as possible. And if you follow nature, I pretty much am, I just don't accept pretty much anything that the mainstream narrative tells us, so they can say whatever they want in terms of astronomy, astrology, or any of it. And I'm going to go with experience, right? That's where I'm headed. I mean, I'm not going to say anybody's right or wrong. I'm just going to say for what I accept the natural world far more than the unnatural created construct that they give us.
Right. And you can also have the knowledge and understanding of why they're doing what they're doing at the same time as knowing that your experience is your experience and that that's what you're going to use to function and to make choices going forward. Do you know
Sure,
what I
that's
mean?
why that's why I continue to read the news. I don't believe it, but I want to see what they're doing.
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not going to go around blind. So, no, I don't disagree. I just go, yeah, that's, yesterday was the official equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, but it's not. But today, like I said, in Seattle, this is the closest to, to equal day and night. It's only 1 second different, which is actually pretty close. There are very, very few days on any of the on any of those that are like the summer solstice. Also, that it rarely is exactly right, and 1 second's pretty close.
What do you got to say, Brett?
Oh, well, first of all, I think 1 second is a very reasonable margin of error.
Yeah.
Right?
So I would consider that the true equinox. I don't know. I think like the grand play is what I can experience as a human in this realm. I look up, I know equal day and night. That's the equinox, regardless of if you tell me, no, that's tomorrow, or yeah, that was yesterday. I know, and it's up to me to be responsible for, keeping track of where I'm at in this realm and what's true versus what I'm told.
You're here.
Well, ultimately, what's happened too is they've separated this now from the holiday season. Only those of us that are in little groups like this and possibly some pagan and heathen groups are going to even recognize that this has anything to do with the equinox in any way. Everybody else thinks this was the birth of a baby. We're celebrating the birth of a baby. And then there's some other cultures that like celebrate some dumb shit, right?
Some other dumb shit. I just have to say, because Chrissy's watching right now and it's her birthday, so happy birthday, Chrissy!
Happy birthday, Chrissy!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
All right, well, let's get into it. So let's look at the traditional theory and idea about what the sun is. I mean, I guess I covered it in the intro. It's like a giant ball of burning plasma flying through space, right?
Yeah, we've got to basically explain that we understand what
they're
saying. That's
Yeah.
my favorite part, when the people that do mainstream science explain like the very mainstream third grade answer. Like, I was in third grade also.
Yeah.
I have rejected said idea.
We didn't miss that day at school, right? So that was going to be my question. Is there anybody here, any of the four amongst us or anybody in the chats that accepts that it is it's a ball of hydrogen that is 93 million miles away and is close to, it's 800 some thousand miles in diameter? Is there anybody here who buys any of that?
So I'm going to always point out that I don't know, and I'm not smart enough to know, and I can't fly up to it and see it, and so I don't know. But I am going to say that ever since I was asked to question, basically by the flat Earth phenomenon, that theory coming out, whether or not the sun was actually that far away, and I started looking and paying attention, it seems like painfully obvious to me that it's much, much closer, especially when you look at the sometimes it's not just like some rays are going sideways. Sometimes it's like you can see sometimes the sun is here and rays are going always. And I'm like, how could that could not happen if you're that far away?
Sure, it's corpuscular rays, and if you know any artist can look at it and see the light and how light it distributes, and they cannot. So again, here's my thing: is as you said, I can't prove anything that's right. But what I typically can do, and this is the way I approach most things, is I can't necessarily prove what I suspect or what I hypothesize, but I certainly can disprove certain things. And I can disprove that it is 93 million miles away, and that we're in orbit around it at 666,000 miles an hour. I can disprove that by the
Isn't that an interesting number, right?
Yeah, it certainly is.
Quite a coincidence.
It is. It's just a coincidence. I can disprove those things through the laws of physics, and the only thing that they have is yeah buts. So the more of those yeah buts you get, the more you just gotta go, that's bullshit. So again, I had, how far away is it? I have no idea. What is it? I have no idea. I can suspect certain things, but what I can say is I can disprove through a variety of means that it is not a burning ball of nuclear fission at 93 million miles away. That's 864,000 miles across. I can demonstrably prove that with the laws of physics, unless they throw in their little poppycock. But I'll skip that word. Unless they throw in their garbage, right? Their nonsense, their blatherings. I can disprove that. What it is, well, fuck if I know.
I can't go so far to say as I can disprove it. I can say it seems from what I can prove and know that it's not.
Right. Well, but I mean, there's no point. I mean, if you've already looked at it, there's probably no point in getting thick into the physics of it. But I mean, I can point out certain things like black body radiation. If you look into that in spectroscopy, it cannot be using the technological tools that we have. It cannot be what they say it is because it produces light across the electromagnetic spectrum, not just light, but all frequencies from X-rays, gamma rays, so throughout the entire electromagnetic spectrum, all across the ether, in a perfect distribution. And that cannot be if it's hydrogen fission. It cannot be. So
well, I'm not necessarily saying like that it can't be proven. I'm saying I can't.
Oh, okay.
I'm not smart enough. And even if I were where you're at, where you can actually even describe all of the elements of it and the, scientific aspects of like why it can't be, I still would have to admit somewhere in my head that like I could be misunderstanding something.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
a simple one is that an explosion by nature, when the explosion happens, which is what this is supposed to be happening, this is a big explosion. That's what's causing the light and the heat. At the
self-sustaining,
at the center of the explosion is where the energy is the strongest, moving the fastest. So things like the dark sunspots that are moving slower are physically impossible.
That's correct.
And then light also will pick up speed after it has exited the sun.
Yeah, they actually have the temperature of the sun hotter outside the corona than at the inside by like 12 orders of magnitude. It's preposterous. And
what's that number, Baldini? Is it 15 million? Is that what I heard? Something ridiculous.
I had to look at it. Yes, it is ridiculous, and it's outside, right? So it's as if you stood, you're next to a bonfire, and you go, "Oh, this is hot," and you go, "Well, I guess I better cool down." So you go 15 feet away, and it's 10 times hotter, and it's outside, it's right? So it's as if the inverse square law precludes it. There's no possible way. Right. So they're defying the laws. I mean, every description that they give us is defying laws of physics at every aspect. So
it's really like they're snubbing that in your face. Like
they do.
You guys are so stupid. You don't realize we are defying laws with this nonsense.
You're absolutely.
And you're just like, cool.
You're absolutely right, because they always, in fact, in my experience, in every form of academia and research, they always begin to use buzzwords and jargon language that obfuscates everything until you get to a point where you go, "Oh, I don't understand that." And they go, "See, you don't understand." And
you're not an expert.
There you go. Exactly. And so they're just going to try to push you out, and that's what they do at every level of research and academia, right? Is that they do that. And so one of the things I can say clearly is that, for example, astronomy is not science. Right? It does not use the scientific method. They cannot alter. They cannot use the scientific method because they can't use. They can't wiggle it. Right? You can't use the independent variable. So you can't vary it. If you can't vary it, it's not science. Right? So any of these aspects or disciplines of quote unquote science, astrophysics, theoretical physics, geology, astronomy, none of that is science. It doesn't comport to the scientific method. So irrespective
I would
what they
like
tell you.
say that anything that is mainstream science for I don't know how long, maybe forever, is not following the scientific method, because almost everything and almost every discipline.
Since Copernicus, since him, he was the original.
Maybe, yeah, because like
I would say since the Jesuits took over. Yeah.
Maybe because you can come up with all kinds of disproofs of all kinds of theories and laws, and they just ignore it literally. And Rupert Sheldrake is my favorite author that talks about how fucked science is, because it's all just based on money and prestige and keeping your name and like fitting in with a group, and it has nothing to do with actual data and actual observation anymore, which was the core of it. And if you did follow the core of scientific method
and peer review, hey Baldini,
I was just going to get
I'm
there.
right?
Yeah.
No, I was just going to get there. Is that what they did was that they introduced peer review as a way to keep it honest, right? And what it actually does, it's a way to keep people out. They're like, we all agree that it's this, so your shit doesn't matter, right? So it doesn't matter what the data is. They throw the data out and go, we all agree that it's this, so fuck you, right?
Me and my friends all are agreeing, and that's exactly we're the experts.
It's worse than that. It's you disagree. Now you're defunded. Like
no, not only defunded, but
like how people are deplatformed. You're defunded.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not in any universities.
Exactly. That's happened numerous times, especially in archaeology, right? Is when they find something that goes against their narrative, they say, no, it's not that. And they go, no, really, but it's this. Like, okay, like the guy who finds soft tissue in dinosaur bones. And they go, oh, well, it can't be that because but it is. Look, I can demonstrate. I can do it every time. And they go, no. And then they fire him and then get him decertified, and he can't work anywhere. So they don't like the data. The data's there, and they shut it down. They take all his stuff. No, we're going to take all those bones. It won't matter. You're going to find more bones because if you do the test properly, you're going to find soft tissue there. Oh, no, we're going to, no, and you can't. That's how it works. So it's not, again, what scientism has become is a way to simply pull the wool over your eyes and keep people from understanding, and to keep people from, just tell people you're too dumb to understand. And then they use the education indoctrination system to make sure that people are too dumb to understand.
Because people will be like, no, I went to school in this, and this is what I did, and you just don't understand. And I'm like, did you ever question that, though? You don't understand. Like, sure. You know, maybe you're like less free because you went through that indoctrination. Probably.
That's what you and I.
You remember when you were kids and your cousin told you some stupid shit and pretended like they were the authority?
My mom said.
When you went out and tested it, it didn't work. Same thing.
This is what Lindsay and I talked about before on a previous show, is that, again, the further you get into this indoctrination system, right, the more invested you are. So even if you do begin to question, go, hey, wait a minute, you realize right away that if you step out of line, you're done. So you just, it's like many people just in certain religions, right, and cults, they sort of, for a moment, they have a moment of clarity and they go, hey, wait a minute, and then they realize they stand to lose everything, and they just kind of go back to, this is one with some of my, I'm not picking on anybody, but some of my LDS friends, and I ask them some things that, hey, what about this? And they go, you see the eyes sort of glaze over, and they go, well, this is just where you have to trust the prophet.
This is why you should,
come on, man.
This is why you should just lose everything, because then you don't have to give a fuck anymore.
Kind of. That's what happened to me, pretty much. I mean, that's why, not to get too much into it, but I, left very high remuneration gigs, right? Because I grew a conscience, and I couldn't lie to people, and that's comes into conflict with your employer on numerous occasions, and so I wouldn't do it, right? And so the more you stand up for what is right, man, this culture is going to step on you, and it's going to step on you. You better be prepared for that if you're going to have the temerity to stand up for what not just you believe in, but what you can prove is right. You're going to have a long road to hoe, but I don't want that to discourage anybody. Just going to say it does certainly change you as a person, and hopefully, I mean, to me, I would say it changes you for the better, and so that's the kind of people I want to hang out with, right? So, yeah. I
want to hang out with you too.
I want to hang out with people in the foxholes, right, with the scars on them, because those are the people who you want to go to battle with. You don't want some,
Anyway. Hey Ben, do you have a sleeping dog nearby? I could hear him snoring. I love it.
It's like somebody's belly is going.
That's awesome.
All right, carry on for a moment. I got to go get that check on that casserole I had started. So,
see, he can't even stop making me jealous about his cooking while we're live.
Right. I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
Oh, should we get into the electric universe? Or Brett, did you want to throw anything in there?
I do.
Okay.
Something. Now, this is kind of off topic, but you guys are some of the smarter people that I know, so maybe I'll run this by you. I watched a video today, and I think my discernment's decent, but I've been duped before. Have either of you seen any old encyclopedias? Like, I don't know if you had them in the family. We used to have them. My grandparents and great-grandparents, I had access to them, and I was such a dipshit that I let them slip right through my fingers.
No.
But anyways, I watched a guy, and he takes out an Encyclopedia Britannica, and he shows it and shows the provenance. And I'm like, okay, seems legit. Looks like the ones I've seen before. And he goes to Antarctica, and sure as shit, the way it's holy smoke.
Yeah.
And the way that it's being described totally supports a flat Earth, which again, I don't give a shit if it's flat or what.
Right.
But the interesting part was it gives longitude and latitude to the fucking firmament.
And wait, what?
What?
Yes,
no.
Yes.
Wait.
Looking right at it. It describes Antarctica, and then it gives the latitude and longitude from Antarctica to the first point that it hits the firmament to the center it's much higher in the center, obviously, than it would be on the end.
Where is this?
Do you happen to remember what particular year edition that was?
1958.
1958.
Okay, everyone listening, find 1958 Encyclopedia Britannica, and we need the entry for Antarctica, and you need to scan it and send it to Rogueways. Send it to Brett.
Well, so check this out. So at its highest point, the dome is supposedly 385,000 and some change, right? Feet. And I'm like, I don't know if that's high enough. But then again, I start thinking about it. If you're looking at a 10-story building, each story is like 10 feet high. 385 change high is pretty fucking high.
Yeah.
And then I started trying to think about when I'm out in the morning and I'm walking and like I see the moon or I see the sun. I'm like, you know what? That kind of makes sense. Like I could see those two bodies being in an enclosed situation with us, and I don't know. Those numbers seem a lot more comprehensible than 93 million and shit like that, where the numbers just get so big that it defies.
You got to
my
make the
ability to
lie big so people won't question it.
Right,
Yeah,
so big that I can't
astronomical,
really.
right?
Yeah, when it's that big, I can't really compare it to anything in my real life that I can say, okay, well, I've seen something 93 million miles away. That's what it looks like. I don't have any kind of scale for that. Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, there's no scale that I can compare it to.
Yeah, and again, this is where I think
That's
that they
insane.
When they only teach you enough to run the machines and not ask questions, right? Again, go back to the inverse square law, which basically states that as energy dissipates, right, as it moves outwards, for every doubling of the distance from the source, it reduces by a factor of 4. So if you do any sort of math at all, like if you just basic math or get a spreadsheet and start kind of just playing with that and see the kind of energy that would be necessary to even go 100,000 miles. Right? It becomes preposterous. And so you can work backwards, for example, in the photographs from the moon. You go, okay, this is supposed to be, 234,000 miles away, or 238 or whatever. But just say 200, 2.25, right? 225,000 miles just for shits and giggles. And you start doing the math on that and see the kind of brightness. You can measure the lumens of the moon from here on Earth, and you can say, wow, it's really bright, right? So you can measure that in what's in candle power or lux or whatever you want to measure it. And then you'd start cutting, going closer and closer. And as you do that, you have to multiply by 4 that brightness level. And by the time you get to the moon, it is brighter than imaginable, right? Brighter than even what they would say the surface of the sun is. And then you look at the photographs, right? They show us, and it's some gray, dusty field. Again, at everything, it's a poke in the eye. They're just telling you, you're stupid, right? And I think that they laugh at us constantly when you see articles like Uranus smells like farts. Yeah.
Yes.
What
oh
else?
my God, that was too much.
And the sun.
Too much.
And the sun is like a fucking pumpkin thingy on Halloween or whatever. It's like,
exactly.
okay,
Well,
buddy.
And let's just go with the real simple. Light is a particle. It is material. Light is actually a particle. So that doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Well, so are you? I'm curious about it. So you think light is a particle? Or are you saying that's what they say?
Absolutely, light's a particle. You can turn things into light all the time. All you got to do is speed that particle up. And the different colors of light are different things.
See, I go the other way, which is that they say light's a particle and a wave. And to me, the reason that they did that is because they wanted to disprove the luminiferous ether, because they needed a media through which it to go. They go, oh, it's a vacuum out there. They didn't have any way to do that. So they had to go with a particle and a wave. So I simply see it as it's a wave, just like all the other electromagnetic spectra. It's just a vibration at a different frequency.
But
so that's just curious. I'd like to chat about that sometime.
Well,
but isn't this everything in the world?
At that speed, it moves as a wave. But you're talking about it's made a transformation. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because at that point, when it hits that light speed, it no longer has a material to it. And it's made a complete transformation. So it's dropped off like when you burn wood. The part of it that's light, the actual light is no longer has the actual hard material. But that doesn't mean that it's not there.
I think I follow the logic. I don't see it that way.
This is how
to me the whole like particle and a wave, that just sends up my bullshit meter right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not opposite.
It's not both.
I'm the opposite, because I look at my life as an existence, and I can see it as a particle and a wave. Like, I can stop right now and say, here right now, here I am. But I can also look at the whole of it and see that it's all connected as one.
I'm a particle that waves.
Yeah, I don't see how that's a problem.
In a simple incandescent bulb, the incandescence is happening because of resistance, right? So if there wasn't actual material being depleted, then that filament should be basically last forever. But they don't. They deplete.
Well, see, I look at it different. I go, okay, so the reason that the light is emitted is because it causes it to vibrate at a certain frequency, right? And that frequency then is what it becomes within that segment of the spectra, the light spectra that we interpret as a color or whatever, that combination of colors. And so once it but it's the resistance of the filament that causes it to deteriorate over time, and then ultimately that it breaks. But what it's emitting is a combination. Well, it's several spectra. It's the heat, so usually heat is part of that, and then the light and some other radiation. Sometimes the slower frequencies are interpreted as a longitudinal wave that comes out as sound, right? So you hear a little buzz or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, right. So
these are all just speeds of the same thing.
Right,
we're talking about speeds.
Right, so I see it as a tendency it's a vibration, right? So, and it vibrates that luminiferous ether, which is the media through which all things vibrate, right? That's the thing that holds it all together, and that was the fifth element. When you go back to way old alchemy, right? The four elements of earth, air, fire, water, where the fifth one was the ether, and that was the one that carried all the other things. And this is what got thrown out through the Michelson-Morley experiment, and what Einstein threw out basically with his what I call his fear of relatives, his fear of special relatives.
He had no fear of relatives. He loved relatives.
Right, exactly. His cousins and sisters, and
yes.
But yeah, that's so his theory of relativity basically threw out the ether and set apparently a speed limit for light, which I still I can't find credible evidence for really for any of that nonsense. Light moves, and we know that it slows down because that's what causes refraction, right? When you shine light through a glass of water, it's entering a different media, that's thicker, and so that's what causes the bending. And then the same thing happens with sound. Any wave, when it hits a media, it's either absorbed, some of it's absorbed, some of it's reflected, some of it's refracted, and some of it's diffused, and that's what happens to it. And so when the particles that it doesn't absorb that pass through it, it causes it, if it's a denser media, it will cause it to slow down, and it's on those edges. When it comes out the other side, it's going to speed back up. If it goes, let's say, going back into air, it's going to speed back up. And so what we see is this angular type of event because it comes in, slows down. So at the leading edge, it turns faster than it gets to the other side, and so it causes it to look as though it's bending, and it bends back the other way. So that's what refraction looks like, and why you have, like when you stick a stick in water, why it looks like it's bending, right? It's not really bending. It's just the way that the light comes through the water is at a different speed than it comes through the air. So setting a speed limit for light, and so the measurement's supposed to be the speed of light, 186,000 miles in a vacuum, right? But we can't create a vacuum. We certainly can't create a vacuum relative to what's in space. 10 to minus 17 torr. It's ridiculous.
Light doesn't carry in a vacuum.
Well, that's the thing, is that if light didn't actually, so that again would to me disprove the model that they give us for quote unquote space, right? Is that It's supposed to be a vacuum, and I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying, and this is why. So this is why I'm saying this is why they called it a particle and a wave, is because it wouldn't propagate through a vacuum because there was nothing to transmit, and so they had to go, oh, it's a particle and a wave, and that's how it gets here. Because when you take everything out, that would be also the ether, and so there's no material. So energy has to go through a wave, right? So a wave has to go through a material. The energy is basically, a wave is energy causing a disturbance, a disruption in a media, right? So it's basically, if you have water and you tap it, you're providing energy, and then you disrupt it, you displace it, and then it causes motion, right? And so that motion is the wave. Well, now that you're saying, well, there's no water, but you still made a wave. Well, that's nonsense, right? And that's where they came up with, it has to be a particle as well. So the particles now, it carries itself, and that's where I just dismiss it and go, it's not. It defies the laws of physics. It's like, that's not possible, and so it just to me it's logic, right? So I don't mean to get all like freaking anybody out. It's like break out the math textbook. I got more issues than National Geographic and more problems than a math textbook, right? So no, I don't want to get everybody make them get a slide rule out or anything. I'm just saying, if you take the time and you look into it, common sense should tell you. You don't have to be a math whiz. You don't have to be I'll say even Einstein's a joke. He's a character. I don't think he wasn't that smart. I've read some of the stuff he wrote. It's bullshit. He's literally pulling stuff out of his ass. It's a rectal extraction, right? So, but you don't have to be a PhD piled higher and deeper, right? You don't have to be a super smart person to use common sense and just to go as far as you can and go, do these things make sense to you? And ultimately, you find that it doesn't, right? Everything they're saying is a lie. It irritates me.
It also bothers me that people give a whole lot of respect to any kind of degrees because it really is a matter of like time and money. Most people are capable of getting them. Most people really are.
You gotta kiss when you get your doctorate, right? You got to kiss the ass of your advisor, and if you don't, they're just going to throw you out. It's nonsense.
Yeah,
it really is pay to play. That's all it is. You had enough money, and you know they say it's who you know or who you blow. And I was like, well, I guess I better get to know people.
Yikes!
I'm not playing with the goats. No, but no, seriously. Hey now, right? So I just like again. I don't mean to harp on it too long into snowballing, the snowflakes and the snowballs. No, I don't mean to unnecessarily flog a mortality challenged equine American, but it is pretty much nonsense and from my perspective, and I say the deeper you look into it, the bigger you see the lie is, and once you get the cap off that can of worms, you find out it stinks. And if you can just get over your ego and again, just let go of the idea that they taught you everything and you freaking know it all, because that's the trap, right? I already know this because I learned this in school.
Right. Because even if you didn't follow everything that was just laid out, you can still understand that you could question the things that you have just accepted blindly without any testing and without hardly any evidence, except maybe pictures and a map that someone showed you, which are all constructed by people.
That's what happened to me with cosmology, right? The first time, just like almost everybody else, the first time I saw a video that had the acronym FE, first time I saw it, I was like, oh, are you kidding me, right? And I was irritated, and so I don't know, it probably took me about a week before I looked and I actually looked at the video. I'm like, okay, what are you trying to say here, right? And all it was kind of the first the dog cam video going up like 110, 15,000 feet, but it was the specular highlight from the sun. When I saw the sun and shining off the water, I'm like, that is not possible from 93 million miles. What the hell is going on here? And then the location of the sun and the star, I started looking more and more into it, and I was like, I gotta have something wrong here. I'm not carrying the two. I'm missing something. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized I had never questioned it. And then when you start realizing how early they teach it to you and how much they pound it into you, I went, hey. And then I got super depressed and really weirded out for a while.
Yes, it is depressing to realize your whole life is a lie and that for some reason nobody has stopped anybody from lying to you.
But for me, that was one of the things that, I mean, I've been chasing down this whole stuff since the 80s, right? It's like I literally learned about the Illuminati in 1984, something like that, and read The Unseen Hand in 1986 or 87, and huge Art Bell fan way back in the day.
We should have a bell that goes off every time someone says 1984.
Right, ding,
ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding, ding.
So I was not unaware of these things, and I tracked down all kinds of quote conspiracy theories and that sort of. I mean, I literally did my 7th grade Texas history report on the Kennedy assassination. Right, I was like so into it. I did in 7th grade. I did that,
did you know it was bullshit back then?
Yes, I did. In fact, I did a lot of research into I looked at microfiche of newspapers and stuff, and
Dude, part of the audience doesn't even know what you're talking about. They're like microfiche, tiny little fish. What the fuck?
Minnows? What are we talking about?
Why is he talking to fish?
Yeah, so
this guy is weird.
Yeah, I was at the library, and I discovered something that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. As I was reading the.
You mean the place where you can check out movies?
Right. So I was looking at the Houston Chronicle, and so not to sidetrack the whole thing, but if you recall, the situation is that Kennedy was having trouble with the Texas Democrats, and so LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, was his vice president. They didn't get along very well. Johnson was well known as being he was basically mafia, really Texas mafia. He was a crooked as they come. And take it out. Is it ready to come out? Just can you pull it out?
Later, Bobby Flay.
That's what she
now
said,
we
though.
know why he doesn't have a camera on. What the hell is going on?
Can you pull it out?
We are naturists here, and we are both unclad.
I gotta pull it all back. So
It is Yule time. Fuck it, it's Yule.
I get it.
Yeah,
you gotta keep the
please.
heat going. Like,
Yeah, no,
it's not a problem.
Anyway, I was going to say the point was, yes, I found out it was bullshit. So, yes, I've been into it for a long time, but I will say that it was this shape of the earth thing that when I understood that, it took the lid off, and I realized that anything and everything that we'd been told could and probably was a lie. And then I started looking into the education and who took that over and how that happened. And since then, I don't accept anything. There's that.
Amen. All right, I want to talk about the electric universe model. It's already come up in chat a couple times.
Eric Dollard, yeah.
Just the theory.
That's not Eric Dollard.
Oh, sorry, he's the water guy. Yeah, no, sorry.
Eric Dollard is electricity, but the electric universe is Walt Thornhill.
Walt Thornhill, right? Yeah.
All right, so lay it out for people, Ben. What's it all about?
Well, it's basically that everything is electricity. It's pretty damn simple, and everything's just electricity, and it's just different speeds.
Yeah, electricity and
so
magnetism.
What does it?
And a magnetism, because you've got cathode and anode. You've got you got a magnet. You got everything's
electric, dielectric. Yep. Exactly.
Exactly.
So what does it mean for us?
So that's just a basic understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, like if you look at it, and this is the way I see it, is the sun is electric, 100%, and that the moon is dielectric. That at night I literally get voltage from the moon with no amperage. And as an electrician, when you look at amperage and voltage, amperage is the feminine side. So that's the pathway. That is the void, the pull. And without that, the amperage, the masculine side can't go anywhere. The amperage is where you're getting your push, your power from, the thing that's actually driving things. But it's still, the two things are one thing. And you need to understand that the same as the way lightning works, it actually starts from the ground.
Yeah.
Because you're picking voltage out from the ground before the amperage that's built up can be released. So it's got to start from the ground. So when you're looking at the way all these things work, you've got to take electricity into account. And electricity it can be very complicated, but really it's not. Once you look at if you just look at electrical theory, rather than, it's different when you just go and rope a couple houses and you're like, yeah, put the ouchie one on this side and the other one on this side. And, when you actually start looking at the way it actually works.
Yeah, and I'll come back to this as well, since you mentioned electric theory, is that pretty much all of electric theory and electronics that we use today is based on the work of Maxwell's equations, and by extension, Planck's equations.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, is that none of Maxwell's equations work without ether. And yet, according to mainstream science, there is no ether because it was disproven by Einstein. And yet, because everything electronic we use doesn't work without Maxwell's equations that require ether, right? It's an antecedent. There must be ether through which it to travel. It's
so ether is literally
circumlocution. They're talking in circles.
It's literally the voltage, because everything else, everything material on the other side of ether, all other four elements are the amperage, and the ether is the voltage. We can't operate without that voltage.
Yeah, and everything has some level of voltage and electromagnetic radiation, right? So certainly all living things do, and that's modulated. But even more static things like rocks and water's dielectric, for example, and it does pretty amazing things. But everything that has life does put off an electromagnetic field, and it modulates. And this is what I think your love and light people call aura, right? It can be photographed with Carillion photography. You can see it expand, contract. You can see people with positive thoughts begin to, you can measure that electromagnetic field draw closer to each other and become harmonious. If they're having negative thoughts toward one another and angry and hatred, you can photograph it, you can measure it, you can measure their electromagnetic fields become polar push against each other. It's
100% of people can also see auras if you try and practice and develop that. Like, that's not a skill. You lost the skill since you were a child, but you can redevelop it again.
Yeah, I think most children are aware of a lot of things until they're told not to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you literally, if you walk up to, I say this all the time, I feel like I'm a broken record, but if you are interacting with a baby or a child under the age of maybe like 5 or 6, the first thing they do when they look at you is they look above your head, and that's because your strongest aura is in this area here. And so they look up there and watch any baby that you see from now on. Just watch when they first see a person where they look. It's always up here. And then they look at your face and your body.
That's
so they want to know the truth of you before they can see what could be lying to them.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, and it's also why when I see a kid freaking out about not wanting to go near a person, I'm like, dude, fucking listen to your kid. Like, your kid probably sees it better than you do.
Yeah, or your cat.
Yeah.
Because they can see in light waves that we can't, and they can, most animals use electromagnetic field for direction as well. So that's how they navigate. Again, they denied that for years until it's absolutely proven, right? Fish, birds, that's where they started. Fish, birds, lizards, reptiles have to have it. And then it turns out dogs, cats, even humans have the capacity for it. But again, we don't.
Someone in the chat is asking, like, how do you know without reading a baby's thoughts? And I personally know because I can see the auras or whatever you want to call them as well. And so when a baby's responding to an aura positively, I can see why. When they're responding to it negatively, I can see why. And you yourself can also go and watch this happen. Again, anybody's capable of it. So whether you want to practice seeing the aura and actually be able to verify it in that way, or whether you want to just watch babies and watch where they look, I guess you can. I can't technically prove that it's true, and I can't say for 100%. I could be misunderstanding, but in all my experience added together, that seems to be pretty effective. And yes, dogs too, definitely, and cats. And those are the only animals I really have enough experience with to know. So but somebody's asking if you can see it on film, and I have seen allegedly
there
Carillion
are aura
photography,
machines,
but
there are aura machines also where you can where it can see your aura.
Yeah, there's the Carillion photography is one of the oldest methods, and it will do it. And then there are more modern methods of that as well.
But I'll say too that what I see is not anything that's ever been on any of those photos or machines. But I think it doesn't matter because the result, I guess like the analysis, the assessment that people are taking from those always matches my analysis, but it doesn't visually look the same to me.
No. But one thing I think we can say without reservation is that the sun, although we don't know exactly what it is not hydrogen fission 93 million miles away. I think we all.
I want to see the aura of the sun. So let's get.
It's called a prominence, love, and
we have talked a little bit about ether and that we need it for these. Like the electric universe and other things to actually work, and that it actually makes more sense than anything else when you start to get into things. But did we ever actually just talk about like what it is?
I got some ideas on that.
Do it.
I read a book, believe it or not, a couple of years ago, and it was called Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. If anyone's read it, he was supposedly quite a magician back in the day. But anyways, he had talked about all kinds of weird techniques. And this was right around the time I started doing like walking meditation, and I was trying to incorporate some of the things that I'd read about. But he had this theory that you could actually take life essence out of the ether, and that you could, not only through the sunlight, but through the air, through a lot of things, you could take it internally through your pores, and that you basically had to get into like a trance-like state where you could actually accept this life force, this energy, this ether into you for your highest good. And that kind of stuck with me as a very interesting concept. I mean, I think about the visual spectrum and how much more there is beyond what we can actually see. And I kind of think ether is just, sort of an extension of that. Like I picture like a dense fog, but it's something beyond what our sense is able to see. But we know it's there. And Derek Murphy. We did that water episode, and he and I kind of were on the same wavelength. And he was saying that maybe the Akashic records are in the ether. And I thought, if the Akashic records exist, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, again, what I do believe is I can press like a dog whistle and my dog will freak out. So I know he hears something. I mean, I've done that test, so I know that works. So there's things beyond our senses, and that's what I consider ether to be. I think it's out there. I think there's something that connects all of us that we don't necessarily see or touch, but those of us that are trying to make sense of things recognize that it's there.
So that's what I was going to ask, is if it's like something that kind of is everywhere all the time. It's like is it like the fucking Force? Is it the Force?
Perhaps. Maybe.
I think some people would describe it that way. I mean, to me, it would be if you were a fish, it would be the water, and I'll tell you this, that if the last person to recognize water is a fish, right?
True.
They do. So I think it would be directly analogous to if we were a fish, ether would be the water. It's what's all around. We're not talking air. We're talking about the substance which is all around us and through which everything flows. And if you want to think of it as the force, I think that would be that's probably what some people are describing as the force. And my perspective on, I mean, I'm 100% on there being an ether, but my perspective on it, my strong suspicions or whatever, my speculation is that this is what is part of, my take on it is that the universe was designed to materialize and manifest your will. So provided that your will is in accordance with the design of the universe, right? So it is the material which is through which all things flow, and that is what is vibrating at different rates to manifest material things. So whether it's a rock or whether it's a piece of wood or whatever, this is all ether, but it's vibrating at a different rate. And so whenever you manifest a will, intention, thought, the ether is what carries that. Again, I just would say it's analogous to me to the water around a fish. It's the place in which they live.
So before Ben tells us what he thinks, because I see this deep thinking going on down there, I just want to bring up what Chris-Ann has said in the chat, which I think she's brought up before, and I really like the idea. She said, will the ether fully return during the golden age? Because right now it feels like it's a little bit diluted or lacking. And then another chatter, Mahadharmapala, said that the atmospheric energy is chi that can be solidified by various energetic methods taught in Asia. And I'll add also with in other traditions as well, like the hemisync practices that I was doing also teach you to work with that energy as well. And then I feel like Ben has something deep to say.
So ether is basically the dark water. And if anybody reads ancient texts, any type of creation text, the ether is the feminine side. Like in ours, in heathen, there's a fire world and an ice world, and Gyanga Gap brings them together.
It's like the void.
So, right. So ether is the feminine, and everything else that you've got to understand that Gyanga Gap was separate from. This is part of why all these religions are masculine when they talk about their worship, because we live in the masculine side, the material side. That's what we can touch, what we can feel, what we can identify with. That doesn't at all mean that that there isn't a feminine that's making all of this happen. And so just like with while the amperage might do the work in your machine, and you can appreciate that you can feel the amperage, you can touch it, you can put your finger on the wire and actually feel the cycles. This is what's doing the work, but that is absolutely not possible without the voltage, which is the feminine side. And you can grab that neutral wire and there's nothing there. You can't feel it, you can't identify it, you can't quantify it. But without it, that masculine will not move. And so this is what is actually making the masculine possible. It's the voltage that allows the entire material side to do what it's doing.
Word.
Yeah, word. I'm like, that's all I can say. So how does plasma fit into all of this? Like
well,
what?
So yeah, I tend to stay more closely to a I don't know, physical material science in some of this stuff, and try to view it that way. Not that I'm not woo, but I just look at it different. I go, well, it does. I would say from my research that it is a plasma. The sun is a manifestation of plasma. It's doing it. It's acting like a transformer. If you, I my current suspicions of what things look like in the world is that it's a quadrupolar toroidal field. It would be
Say that 3 times fast.
Quadrupolar toroidal field.
quadrupolar toroidal field. Come on, Brett. I know you can do it. We're good.
I can't do it.
Can't do it.
You can
All
do
right.
it, Brett.
All
It's
right.
the hat. The hat gives you the energy to do it.
But essentially that there is a cosmic egg or whatever, but that is not, we don't live on the outside of that, right? That the Earth would be a dielectric inertial accretion disk, right, in the middle, and then you have the as above, so below. So there's a positive above and a negative below, and the Earth is sort of the ground, right, in between, and that the sun is a transformer of energy, and so and may possibly be really just so there's a talk about like the second sun and that sort of stuff, and I suspect, I can't say 100%, but I suspect that there is an external source, and the sun is sort of like a lens. What we see as the disk of the sun is sort of a lens of it's like a transformer. It's a place where
it's the aperture.
Yeah, that
basically an igniter is probably an easier way for people to visualize that.
Yeah, it's the secondary place. So it's getting its energy externally, but it's manifesting there, and the moon is sort of the polar opposite of that, if you will. That's how I view it right now. So so plasma, sure, it's a plasmatic manifestation of it, but yeah, I don't know. I just it's a little, probably without getting too technical, it would be a electromagnetic manifestation, similar to, if we go look at black body manifestation, that sort of stuff. What's happening is it's fairly equal across the entire spectrum, and that's in part why spectroscopy says that it cannot be hydrogen, a nuclear self-sustaining nuclear fission. It just can't. It can't be. In any case, yeah. So plasma, yeah, sure. Why not?
So
the way I understand it, it's just basically a density of it's just very dense energy. Which energy can get more dense.
It's like liquid energy.
It has weight. Like energy has density and weight. It's very easy to go take a battery and weigh a depleted battery compared to a brand new battery, and it's shocking the difference in weight.
Shocking.
Yes.
Wait, so Ben, do you have an idea about why lightning would go from cloud to cloud rather than to the ground? Or anybody? Sorry. I don't know why I leveled that at Ben.
To keep me from talking, because I talk too much.
No, you can go for it if you have an answer.
Well, just to go back to what you said about liquid, you kind of triggered me. There is some speculation that the sun is hydrogen, liquid metallic hydrogen, right? So, and that would, to a degree, make sense that that's a component of it. But it certainly, isn't this nuclear thing. In terms of lightning going from cloud to cloud rather than touching down, I've seen that a ton of times in Texas, and it's a fascinating thing to see that it arcs across the sky and never hits the ground. And I will say this: what it does do is one more thing to disprove the story that they're telling us. Right. So whatever they say it is, it ain't that. Take whatever they tell you it is.
So for me, the way it happens is one energy center or bank of clouds has a much higher positive charge buildup, which once you start looking at macroverse and microverse, you understand that the one is just lesser than the other. They're still the same thing. So once you put that into perspective, you understand that because this one, the one cloud is so much more highly charged than the other, this one technically becomes a negative, and it will actually push back over into the other one.
Yeah, well, so it would be analogous to wind, right? So you have high pressure going to low pressure.
Yes.
So I mean, if you look again, this is the whole premise of the free energy thing, right? Is that you've got 100 volts per meter with very low amperage, but as you go vertical away from the Earth, you go to the anode from the cathode, right? So as you go vertical, you've got 100 volts per meter going vertical, and this is where all the free energy stuff is kind of comes from. And so that would totally make sense to me again, is that it's essentially the same as thinking of wind. You get high voltage passing to low voltage, and there's a plasma discharge in between. It doesn't seem to be, I don't know, as crazy difficult to figure out as what the sun is. It's enigmatic to me for sure, because I can't get there, right?
Right.
But I can certainly do some tests, and I've looked at some tests in labs and that sort of stuff, and lightning is less mysterious. It is mysterious. It's cool, but it's far less mysterious to me than the sun, which is absolutely enigmatic. The moon is too. Those things are crazy.
They're crazy.
Absolutely agree.
So let's get into the various ancient traditions in the world and what they say about the sun and the sun's
nice
role.
Good. I've been
my favorite part.
I want to just launch. I want to launch this part, and then I want to listen to what you guys have to say about this, because this was the one part in kind of doing some research about this that blew my mind, but just shook me up a little bit. Right? Is that I've been doing research on a whole bunch of different stuff, and I found more and more lately that things are harder to get information on. Right? They literally are scrubbing the information.
Barn wall.
Man, they are doing it.
Yep.
Really badly.
It's really easy when we're in the age of electronics. It doesn't take anything.
It's really easy, yeah. Right? And so, for example, I had watched a couple of videos previously on specifically on spectroscopy in the sun, and I was going to just kind of refresh my memory on that. Cannot find it anywhere. All my saved videos are deleted. It's like all that stuff. It's
fucking horrible. The shit that I used to find anywhere are just gone.
So then I start looking at, for example, like, sun worship, right? Ancient cultures and sun worship. And so it has always been we all know that most ancient cultures venerated the sun to one degree or another, and that many cultures did sun worship, right? All right. Mm-hmm. So if you'll now go to what they tell you and then go bullshit. So here is Encyclopedia Britannica. Although sun worship has been used frequently as a term for, quote, pagan religion, they're just saying it's a conflation there, Ben. They say it is, in fact, relatively rare. Though almost every culture uses solar month, only a relatively few cultures, they give to Egyptian and Indo-European, and then to a degree Mesoamerican, developed any kind of solar religion. Is that just straight up in your face bullshit?
That's bullshit. Yeah.
I mean, we all know. I mean, every single ancient
actually. Hold on though. Let's look at this though. So the Greeks had Apollo, but Apollo wasn't the king god. The heathens, we have Odin. He's, most people wouldn't consider Odin the sun. So when you're looking at the sun is the high ether. And that's its own order as compared to the dense side. And when most people on the pagan end anyways, worship somebody that put them together, that's both put together.
Well, okay. So, but for example, if you look at, for example, the Baal, whatever, version of mystery religion right there. So he is the representation, Baal, the figure, but they represent that by venerating the sun, right? So it's a kind of intertwined. Mm-hmm. So for them to come straight out and say, no, nobody really did that. I did the same thing happened when I was looking at a child sacrifice. They're like, yeah, there were stories told, but nobody really did that.
It's just like the astrotheological aspects of some deities is going to be sun-like. And so whether or not they called it the sun is a different thing. Did. Go ahead.
I wasn't. I was trying to catch what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying that even if they weren't like, here's the sun, we worship it, there was a way that they worshipped the sun. Absolutely. They represented it in some way and worshipped it. Yeah.
I wasn't stating that there wasn't ones that the sun was the primary. I was agreeing that the of the actual pagan, what you classically would consider pagan, which typically for some reason is Roman, actually do not worship the sun as in some way, though all of them have a veneration of the sun for sure.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't saying that all of them did, but I'm saying to some degree or another, there's sun veneration in nearly every ancient culture, to one degree or another, and that should be demonstrable. And I just found it shocking that they right away go, nah, poo poo. And I can find the same thing with Wikipedia if they say anything. For example, I was looking into that Oregon, right? And the very first thing they go is, it's bullshit. Even though later in the article they say, well, that they actually did demonstrate some positive effect, blah blah blah. That's the very end of the article, and they go, yeah, but we don't believe it anyway. The data shows that it does work, but we don't know how to explain it. So
ignore it.
So poo poo. This is exactly what they do with everything. That's all I wanted to get in, is that as I started to kind of refresh my take on it and everything, I find that they are scrubbing this barn wall so badly that people are going to believe in that. And when you combine it with the Mandela effect, and that people are believing that is just misremembering, everybody is going to not everybody, but a vast majority of people are just going to suddenly take the tack that, I just must not have remembered. I'm just having trouble remembering clearly. I can't quite remember what the barn wall said, and this is, I don't know. It's certainly concerning to me. All right,
right.
You guys,
and you can
you
see
guys
that
know more about the mythical stuff than I do in that regard. I look at it from a distance, and I'm fairly well read in it, but I'm not steeped in it. So you guys are going to have a better take on that.
Well, and this is what you're describing is happening in every single arena and every single discipline across the everything across the board. But I like Rogue Cow points out the sun is female in Japan and Germany. Maybe he thinks.
So in heathen, the sun was originally feminine.
Huh.
Now this gets into am I just taking my turn now? I guess.
Yeah.
So you look at heathen cosmology. Originally, the sun was Suna, which is feminine, and the moon was Mani. And there was actually two suns and two moons at one point in time before the fight of the gods. And you've got to understand that when you're talking about that, the original fight was between the Asir and the Vanir. So this is the etheric gods and then the dense gods of that time. Well, that all settled out, and we moved into a different portion of the cycle. So then we dropped down to Suna and Mani. Then they were both eaten and then replaced by our current suns and moon, which is masculine. So if we look and we take a figure or infinity symbol, and we understand that there's two suns and that they're moving what would appear opposite to each other, they never are, because the black sun and the normal sun are not actually two separate things. They're only moving opposite to each other because of your perspective. Just like if you take and move your right hand clockwise and your left hand clockwise, when you put your fingertips together, they look like they're moving opposite, but they're not. It's just a spatial positioning. So when we look at this, they're moving opposite of each other from our perspective, and at one point in time they cross. This is where they both get eaten, and then we end up with a different perspective sun because we're on the opposite side of it, which is a very interesting thing. But like electrically, English cars are positive ground. People don't understand that the positive and the negative are the same thing at the end of the day. It's all actually one thing. Just like in alchemy, what I'm doing is breaking things down to their salt and their oil. But at the end of it, after the alchemical marriage, the salt and the oil were one thing. You can't separate them anymore. So they always were one thing. They were just counterpositional, and they needed that earth elements to tie them together until you could get them to figure out to move that they were moving the same fucking way. So this is the way every damn thing in the universe works. Every damn thing. So what we have is just a step in a cycle. And this is represented in a lot of the cultures. And it's one of the ways that I pick out the age of a culture I don't believe anything about our culture is the oldest, blah, blah, blah. Because for starts, when humans started appearing, it's just like any other thing. When you present the elements for life, life appears everywhere. If I take a loaf of bread and I stick it in a place where it would naturally mold with some nice humidity and some heat, mold will pop up all over the bread. It won't pop up in one spot. So that anybody's the oldest culture, and they're all talking about nature. Well, we all live here, and even when you're talking about an invention, 50 people have the invention at the same time. One person might get the patent and the credit, but 50 people did the invention. So this is all, everything's the damn same all the damn time. And all you got to do is understand the mechanics of that and then start carrying it up. A lock is not much different when it's more complicated. It still basically works the same. That's what as above, so below is supposed to be. So when we're talking about the sun, when you're looking at heathen cosmology, obviously my favorite, when the Aesir and the Vanir fought, that was one step. So when you're talking about Ragnarok is a different war. When they talk about Ragnarok, that's the return of the ice giants and the Surt, the fire giants. So we're talking about, before it was different levels fighting against each other, and it expands out. So if you're looking at a 9 chakra system, and Midgard is your solar plexus, that's your 5th chakra. And then in 2s, they go dunk, 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 dunk. And each time they just rotate. And then at the end of the entire cycle, we flip, because that's the way it works. I'm sure that was horrifyingly complicated.
Yeah, well, like, I'm sure it is.
Bit of sense to anyone.
No, it makes sense.
No, I followed a lot of that.
Yeah, I did too. But I think, like, probably maybe some of the listeners don't. But a lot of the listeners are people who've been listening to you for a while. So it starts to, like, you're, like, adding little pieces for people each time you talk about this. And it's pretty rad. It actually connects with some of the stuff that I've been tripping on lately, which also connects with an experience I had while sun gazing. But I don't know if we want to get into experiences and practices yet, or if Brett, you had something to add to mythologies.
No, experiences and practices is what I'm doing.
Okay, do it.
All right, so let me go back several years. This will be 2015, so not that long ago, but it seems like a lifetime ago. I was confiding in one of my closest friends, and a guy that I've known my whole life. He had come to visit me in Texas. He lives in California. And I hadn't seen him in years, but we've always stayed in touch. And, I'm not really good at staying in touch with people, but we've always made an effort, and we've remained friends our whole lives. So anyways, I hadn't seen him in face-to-face in probably 4 or 5 years. He comes to visit. We end up going out, getting tore up, like guys do. And we get in a pretty...
That would never happen.
But we get in a pretty heavy rap, right? And at the time, he was a really staunch Christian. And that was like... he felt like all the success he was having in his life was due to his faith, and he was really trying hard to make sure I didn't miss out on any of God's glory, as it were. And so we started talking about it.
It's very kind of him.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it was coming from a good
Are we
place
on Secrets of Saturn? I heard that's a Christian show.
No, well, check this out. So we're talking about it, and at the time, I'm pretty open-minded. I used to go to church when I was a kid, but once we were old enough to take a vote, which I think I was probably in 5th grade, we voted that we didn't want to go anymore, and broke my mom's heart, and it was shitty of us, but that's what happened. So I have very little formal churching. But after spending the weekend with him and just seeing how much he was into it, and like how it seemed to be really helpful for him and making him just alive and feeling great about shit, I started thinking about, like, what do I believe in, and this and that. And at the same time, I was getting into meditation and walking meditation, and that's when I first started my practice. And I had confided in him, and I felt like a weirdo saying it, but this is a perfect time to talk about this because I'm talking to a bunch of weirdos. I said, when I'm doing my walking meditation, for some reason, I feel compelled to look at the sun. I said, I don't know what it is, and I know you're not supposed to look at the sun, but I just find myself doing it, and I'm doing it for longer and longer. And I know I sound like a fucking idiot, but something's telling me to do that. And he says, and he was way more into weirdo shit than I thought, because we hadn't really confided in one another. He was like listening to Higher Side, and he was fucking listening to Crow, and he's the one that turned me on to Crow. But anyways,
interesting.
He was like, hey man, like at the top of the Vatican, those motherfuckers all worship the sun, so maybe there's something to it. And if your highest self is directing you that way, then just go with it. Because I thought he was such a straight Christian, he would get freaked out by that. But he was totally the opposite. And then I learned that we were both into all kinds of weird esoteric shit, and it made us even better friends. So anyways, I started doing sun gazing without researching it, without knowing the proper way to do it. I just jumped in intuitively. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the reason that I was excited to do this sun episode is it has done a lot for me personally. I think that the fluoride in our water, one of the main reasons it's there is not only to make us docile, but it's to calcify our pineal gland, to take away any kind of connection we have to higher realms. And sun gazing will help to decalcify your pineal gland. It will give you a connection to nature that you haven't had. Or I shouldn't say it gave me that. And it's funny when I think about the programming growing up, I used to hear shit like tree hugger, and like you picture like the long-haired Spicoli type of fucking idiot, like a dim-witted guy that's kind of feminine. He's like, they did everything right to take a person like me that like played sports and that wanted to have like a macho persona to make me not want to fucking get into nature. Nature's for fucking effeminate dudes. And, like if you're a man's man, you shouldn't fuck with nature. And that's so
a good point.
Nature's for sissies.
Yeah,
exactly.
Programming.
Tree hugger. Like,
I know. I'm such a pussy.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite.
It's fucking horrible. But anyways, after sun gazing, and I wanted to just give a couple examples because this might make sense. When you first start looking at the sun, the first time you do it, if you've never done it, and a lot of us haven't, I probably hadn't until 5 years ago, probably. If you look at it dead on, what you're going to notice is after about 10 seconds, so here's the sun. Yeah, got you, motherfuckers. Here's the sun. so here's the sun.
That's racist.
It's racist and satanic.
After about 10 seconds, it opens up. So picture the sun as a dime. Now it's like a dime inside of a 50-cent piece. There will be a larger ring around the sun that's perfectly clear, right? So you've got the bright sun perfectly clear around it, and then here comes the rest of the sky. That's something provable. You can do that tomorrow and you'd be like, oh, motherfucker, that is something. So that's where it starts. And I jumped in the deep end. Like I probably stared at the sun for like 5 minutes the first time I ever looked at it, just because I was ridiculous and didn't know any better. And it's not how I would encourage anyone to go about it. I think a safe practice is to do it 8 seconds and then increase in increments of 8 seconds each day. The only time that is safe to look at it, so from what I've heard, is an hour from sun up and an hour to sundown. I can tell you, I've looked at it at the high noon. I've looked at it all different ways, but I wouldn't encourage that. But I can also tell you this. My eyes have been degeneratively getting worse since I was probably 20. Huh. Meaning like every 2 years when I get an eye exam, I have to get new glasses and they're just getting shittier and shittier. I've been sun gazing for the last 4 years, and the first 2 years when I got my exam, it was the first time ever that my prescription didn't change. So I kept the same glasses. And 2 years later, same. So I've got different glasses since then, but in 4 years, my vision hasn't gotten better. I've heard people say that I actually revert. I think Dave Weiss will say it's reversed their vision problems and gotten better. Mine hasn't gotten better, but it hasn't gotten any worse. Wow. And it was getting progressively worse every 2 years, and it's flatlined, and that's good enough. Yeah. I mean, it tells me that it's definitely not hurting my vision. So, I guess in that sense, every 2 years it was getting worse. Now it's not. So I guess it's improving it. I'd also just say that up until that point where I started doing it, and I got up to where I was doing almost 30 minutes of direct sun gazing. And that's intense. You can think of 30 minutes and think like, oh, that's not that long. It's a fucking long time if you're looking at the sun. Yeah. Like it's intense. And after that, well, sorry, I'm jumping around so much, but I guess I'll try to get to this point. Is in 2017 we had this big eclipse. I don't know if y'all remember that, but it was a big deal. Yeah. Like it was highly promoted.
The Great American Eclipse.
Yeah. And
pretty sure the three of us were friends at that point.
Yeah.
We all talked
we were.
about it.
Well, okay, so check this out. So I'm eating lunch with one of my buddies, and I wanted to fucking sun gaze, right? Like that was important to me. Like I wanted to look at it with my bare eyes. I felt like I'd been sun gazing long enough where I could handle it, and I didn't believe that it would make me go blind. I think that whole narrative is bullshit. But long story short, I got out of lunch, and it had already started. Like there was people all along the streets that were, they had like their special hootenanny bullshit toilet paper roll or whatever they're looking through, and it was pretty much over by the time I got out of lunch. But I will say this, that the next day I got up for sun up and sun gaze, and I called my buddy in California, and he said, man, something was weird about the sun. And he says, fuck, you thought so too? And there was. Something changed, and I can pinpoint to that day. That day, something changed.
And for the better or worse, or what?
I hate to say for the worst, but kind of for the worst.
Yeah.
For the worst in the sense that picture like a warm light versus like a fucking fluorescent light.
Yeah.
Now, sun gazing is more harsh. I can do it because I feel like my eyes are kind of calloused, and I've got enough control over my faculties of my mind that, I can handle it. But I think if I were to get into it and to look at it now, and that was my first time looking at it, I probably wouldn't be as inclined to stick with it. It's more of a harsh sun than it used to be. But there's still value to it.
Yeah.
Indeed there is. But there's a distinct difference between pre-2017 eclipse and post-2017 eclipse. I feel like the energy is different. Everything is just a little bit off.
So that's
whatever
all
that means.
Fascinating, and it like caused an eruption in the chat, and so people want you to repeat kind of like how often, how long, what times of day, and like how they can maybe start.
All? Did you take monoatomic gold more specifically? Did you take monoatomic gold and try sun gaze?
No. I tell you what though, Ben. I Moldavite. I used to carry that with me religiously.
Yeah.
And I'd sleep with it under my pillow, and I'd wonder why I was having all these crazy ass dreams. But that I think there's something to it. And I wasn't convinced of it.
That's supposed to be the stone from the Holy Grail.
Wow.
I can believe it because weird shit happens if you're open to it.
Well, I'll just add really quickly before you get back in. Just one question then for you is: do you also do grounding when you do that?
Hey, Baldini, my man, that's exactly what I was going to recommend. Is if I had my druthers, the best way to do it is barefoot. And 8 seconds. And then the next day is 16 seconds. I mean, incrementally add on. But like with me, I walk in the morning and I try to see sun up, but I'm in a public park. So there's, 10 or 12 people, and people are walking dogs and this and that. And I'm in Texas, so it's typically warm. So, 8 months out of the year, I could get barefoot. But like on a day like, if it's 30 degrees in the morning, being barefoot's kind of a pain in the ass.
Tough, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times I don't ground, but ideally that's the way you do it. And when I don't ground, what I typically do is I'll look at the sun in like 2 or 3 minute bursts, and I'll do it 3 or 4 times. Whereas if I'm able to have my feet off and like get comfortable and whatnot, I can do it for, a straight 15, 20 minutes. Typically I don't do it for more than like 10 minutes at a clip, because really I feel like that's enough. And not to get too weird, but I would say when I was looking at it at the peak, like when I was just trying to every day, like see how long I could take it. And it's not like take it, not like it was torture, but like it's hard to gauge
pushing the limits.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to gauge how long. Like you have to be like, are you mentally aware enough of like, has it been 8 minutes or has it been fucking 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Like it's hard to tell, and especially if you're really clear in your mind and you're trying to just empty yourself out and take whatever download's coming or whatever you're trying to put out into the universe. It's hard to, like sometimes you might kind of get in a trance-like state and it might have been 2 minutes or it might have been 20 minutes. So you don't really know. So, it's a weird thing. But at the height of where I was looking at it kind of endurance-wise and like just seeing how long I could do it and how far I could take it, that's when some really neat shit will happen. And I'll just describe a couple things that if anyone wants to try this out, this is pretty easily proven. If you look at the sun, I would say for as much as 5 minutes, that's probably the minimum you can do it to have these experiences. When you're done, look away, take your hands, put them over your eyes, firmly, like don't poke your eyes out, obviously, but like, put some pressure on there. And just at that point, something very interesting will happen. And what I've noticed is you'll see vivid colors. And depending on what you were thinking about or what the day was or whatever the variable is, maybe whatever the sun thought you needed, it could be blue, green, red, pink, whatever. I mean, but the most vivid colors you'll ever see, and they'll be inside of your eyes, with your hands pressed in, holding in, and it's brighter than anything you've ever seen. It's brighter than anything you've ever seen in a movie or a video or anything.
And it's
pretty
patterns?
Bizarre. A lot of times. Sometimes it's just a solid color. A lot of times it's geometric figures. And I will say, this one time I allegedly did DMT, I saw geometric figures that were very much uniform to shit that I'd seen after sun gazing.
So I just...
Nice.
Yeah.
So people don't see that all the time?
I don't. I mean, if you only look at the sun for like 20 seconds, you're not going to get something. Well, I mean, you might. Everyone's different. I didn't, like once I got my minutes up where I was like over 5 minutes, that's when weird shit, or not weird, but just stuff I'd never experienced started happening.
Huh.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody that's ever taken DMT, the geometric shapes is basically universal. You're definitely seeing that.
Yeah, well, and that this goes back to, I just want to get this on the record. I don't know what this means because for whatever reason, I just haven't made this a priority in my life, even though I've told myself I'm going to. I've never taken the time to get the compass and the rule and do sacred geometry. But the people that I've talked to that have said, if you do it, you get it in a way that I can't explain it.
Absolutely. So, with my tree of life, I tell people that all the time. If you don't actually draw it and see how it's put together, you're not going to get it.
Practice.
Yeah.
So I guess
I'd like to tie back into something we'd said earlier, that again, as children, you get it before you're told not to. And I can recall probably I was about, 6 or 7, and I was very compelled to sun gaze, and enjoyed the hell out of it until, told not to. That'll burn your eyes up, kid. And I didn't, and I still haven't for a long time, but I have been grounding over the last few years, and it made a profound difference. But I just throw in there that I was naturally compelled to as a kid. It felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, even as a solar panel, if you're going to pick up charge off of it, you can't just pick up amperage. You've got to be grounded. Yeah. Or else it won't flow.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, something I would say is in times like this season where grounding isn't really an option, and honestly, just sometimes it's vanity. Like, I just don't want to be the weirdo standing there barefoot when it's fucking 30 degrees out.
Yeah.
But as luck would have it, where I live, as I'm walking home, I'm walking up a hill. So like the ground is literally above me, so when I get to where it's like chest level, I think you can ground through your hands just as well. And what I'll say is, if you've looked at the sun for, even as little as like 2 minutes, when you ground, whether it be through your feet or your hands, you can feel energy flowing.
Yeah.
This, I mean, if you want to, I try to picture it, like if I'm barefoot, I try to picture it from my feet to my crown chakra and back down. But even through my hands, I just do it like I go bottom half first and then up to my top. And I think there's real energy that's coming from the sun. I mean, think about it. If you plant a seed, that seed will turn into a tomato or, a zucchini or whatever. It's, that's a whole nother topic. But basically, I think that the sun, it's a sentient thing, and it gives you what you need. And, if you're willing to accept it.
Oh, well, bookmark that.
Yeah.
Bookmark that with the sentient thing. But in terms of it giving, power and life-giving power, I mean, first, I want to just address the hands versus the feet. Yes, it's absolutely better than nothing for sure. Although I would throw in that the feet probably are, to some degree, a little bit better, because looking at reflexology, there is connection from the feet to all the other areas of the body, so it would probably have a better effect than just the hands.
Well, even like Eastern medicine, like think how much things they can do through the feet.
Reflexology, the same sort of thing that's connected. To some degree. But you got to make that connection, right? If there's energy coming, you got to be grounded for it to really do much good or to really work. But to the idea of the sentient thing, I'm all over that. And my research has led me to, again, strongly suspect, I can't prove anything, and I'm never 100% on hardly anything, but that all the luminaries are sentient.
Let's get back to that, because I still want to be on sun gazing for a minute, because I still have some things to add.
Sure.
Okay, so I wanted to add that, first of all, I thought everyone saw those colors and patterns all the time, and I didn't know that was not a thing. So I'm a weirdo because I do. And I've only sun gazed a little bit, and actually it's because of Brett encouraging me to do so. And I know that I've heard that it's best to do it in the like you were saying, in the early morning or the late evening as the sun's going down. And some people say that there's like a 30-degree angle that when you're just beginning, you shouldn't get it outside of that. However, the one time that I had interesting experience and was able to do it for a long time with no visible chemtrails and like an actual, because I wonder if that also, mutes it or affects it in some way.
Oh, yeah.
So the one time I was able to do it with, a clear view at that right time and grounded. I was actually in the hot springs up in Canada. If you want to go watch that road trip video, I don't think I talk about it though, but it was so rad. And I was the moment when I was actually in it alone, which was ironic because the day before the guy had said he'd been going there for his whole life, like 40 years, and had literally never been there alone. And I went there and all of a sudden there was no one there. And I got to spend like over an hour there by myself. So I was grounded and in hot spring water up there and sun gazing. And I had a very direct sort of yeah, it was really cool. It was very random and unexpected. And I had what I experienced as a very direct transmission of information. And it had to do with and I think that this will resonate with Ben, and then it also ties directly into the idea of the sun as a sentient being. That the direct message was basically that we're all separated into two parts, sort of like this constant idea of the twin, and one's bad and one's good, or if that's how you want to look at it. But at the very least, one is like forgotten and cast off, and the other is like what you're experiencing now or whatever. And that basically you have to find a way to merge those, like physically, mentally, and emotionally, or else there's like literally no hope for anyone. And it was a very it was a happy, I don't want to say happy, it was a positive transmission of this idea, but the message is a bit dark and scary and serious.
Because this ain't an easy thing.
Yeah.
The Odin path, Odin hung on Yggdrasil for 9 days, with nobody helping him. That didn't sound like a good time. Like
9 again, Sasha. Sorry.
This
sounds consistent with the the mythos of Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal as well.
Yeah.
And it's like
which if you want to, like the machine in Dark Crystal that the crazy witch lady has, that's I'm guessing it. I think that's probably an in your face with how the universe actually works, and the Earth in the center doesn't spin.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is, especially the series, the Netflix series, more so than the first movie.
I don't know anything about the series, but
there are so many Easter eggs in that. It's as if they just threw everything in there. My jaw hit the floor watching that whole. I was like, you are kidding me, because I always look for little drops here and there. That thing it's just chock full of it. I mean, it's all tangent a little bit. They turned it a little sideways, but some of it's straightforward, direct, and you just like your jaw will drop.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just getting worse and worse. So before we move on, the reason I asked Brett whether he had taken or a monoatomic gold more specifically than just Ormus, because for some reason everybody's extracting it out of like sea salts and things. That's not the same thing as a monoatomic gold by any means. But
is monoatomic? Is that like if you take like colloidal silver? Is that same as monoatomic?
Colloidal is 30 parts per million. Monoatomic is 1 part per million.
Yeah.
So you've got a different binding with colloidal. You can actually colloidal will bind together because it's not fully broken down, and so that's where you can get silver poisoning from colloidal silver if you take enough of it. It works as a antibiotic because of that binding effect. It's able to grab onto bacteria and things like that. But eventually, if it doesn't have those to grab onto, it'll bind all together and you'll get sick.
Right.
But so the sun is gold, alchemically. So when you're looking at Ormus, what Ormus would be similar to is fourth phase water, if people are familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where with fourth phase water, electrically, you're separating it into a positive and negative. You are actually separating the water into electrical sides.
And it polarizes, yeah.
Yes, and polarizes. So inside of a plant, the way that works is the polarized part is left, or the nuggets, the kernels, because then that portion of the water actually acts as a void and pulls more water into it and allows it to make that bioavailable immediately.
Yep.
So Ormus is basically the same thing, only for the sun, because gold is actually the sun slowed down. The sun, when we're seeing it up there, is at maximum speed. Alchemically, when it comes down to Earth, it slows down. And even on the old gold mines, they understood this because they'd put a flower of life accumulator over the mine. And if you ask the people from the mines, I've done this, they just call it, well, I don't know, it's an accumulator. Like, because that was actually concentrating, because they understood at one point in time that that's just sunlight slowed down. And the other metals, like that's why the other moonlight is silver. That's actually silver. So that's the different metals tied to different planets, because when
by slowed
energy
down,
hits them.
Well, so by slowed down, would you consider this like a harmonic? Like, for example, in music, you've got to say the note A. We talk about, the 432 and 440, but concert tuning is 440, and then the octave above that, right, is 880, and then the variations, you get the intervals in between are ratios of that, right? So it's like a similar thought to that. So you take, like, gold is a direct, like, say 100 octaves lower or whatever, it's directly divisible. Is that the way to think of it? Okay. Yeah.
So when you're looking at eating Ormus, you're basically creating the negative void side to the sun, so it's pulling that energy to you, so that way it completes itself. And
did you say eating
Ormus,
eat it?
Eat it.
I didn't know people ate
yes.
it. Like, I thought you just had it like in a
you
pyramid,
eat it.
like by you. No shit.
No,
right.
you eat actual monoatomic.
I've never heard that.
It has to be monoatomic.
Ben, when are you gonna make us? When are you gonna make us Ormus?
when I get the component that's really hard to get is the
arsenic.
medical grade hydrogen peroxide.
Really?
When you make monoatomic gold is you take a gold bar, toss it in some acid, you take the peroxide, and the peroxide is what creates the action. And the gold, because it won't actually break down if you just throw it in the acid.
So you put some
catalyst,
right?
Yeah, it needs a catalyst. Peroxide's your catalyst, and eventually that'll turn down into where it's just completely broken down monoatomically into a liquid. And then you use Bain-Marie tears as a reagent to pull that side of the gold out.
I've never heard of that before, Ben. I don't even know what that is.
All right, so
right.
Then
yeah, no.
So I was like, you say that like we know, we don't know. But so
like, is he kidding?
Why are they so?
No, I'm not kidding.
Is this why they don't? Is this why hydrogen peroxide medical grade is hard to get, or is it just because it's dangerous and it dissolves to your
I think
skin?
It's just difficult to get.
Okay.
So the shit that's like 99 cents in the grocery store is like
It's
a
not.
So when you're buying store-bought Ormus, let's go ahead and say gold is $1,500 an ounce. Gold is weighed in troy ounces, so that's 32 grams. You divide 1,500 by 32, and you realize what your gram price is. Now, I took that gram of gold in $1,500 an ounce. There's only 32 of them fuckers, so that thing started out expensive, over $50. I take a gram of gold, and now I've got to add the cost of the acid, the cost of the peroxide, and the cost of the Bain-Marie tears, and the time that I took to do it. Now, just like with separating wheat from chaff, I start out with 10 pounds of wheat, or wheat before the separation. I don't get 10 pounds back. So after I do the alchemical procedure to make the gold monoatomic, I don't get a gram back. I get half a gram at best. So you're paying $70 for something that took me 2 grams of raw gold, plus all these other things to
plus
make.
Your time.
Yeah, and knowledge to do it. Yeah.
When just for me to buy 2 grams of raw gold, the material supposedly used to make this would have cost me $100. How
So you're
the
like,
fuck does that pan out?
so it should be like
To
$200
use another
minimum
pun.
to even guess that it might be good or something.
Right. So nobody's getting monoatomic gold in the first place, and then they don't realize that that's. And the thing is let's take even biblically that story's in there. It's in all kinds of different stories. Biblically, when Moses came down from the burning mountain with the 10 commandments and found all the little Hebrews running around the golden calf and worshiping and shit, got all butthurt about it. What
I love
did
it.
he took fire and turned that golden calf into white powder. Well, if you take it, just put fire to gold, gold is a feminine aspect. It turns liquid, and then as soon as you take that heat away, it goes right back to solid. You need to use alchemist fire, which once you put it in that acid and you put in the catalyst, it smokes and screams just like fire, and then it'll end up turning into a white powder. And then what did Moses have them do with that white powder? Yes, they snorted it, and they said,
Woo!
I am God!
I love it.
I don't think that's how the story goes. But
That is how it went. I'm pretty sure that's scripture.
Oh, damn it!
We're rewriting
I'm not
shit.
a Christian. No, but he made them eat the white powder then.
Yeah, he mixed it with water. Yeah.
Right. So what they were doing was eating ormus or monoatomic gold, and then these people managed to wander around in the desert. What's very prominent in the desert?
Sand.
The fucking sun.
Oh, the sun.
Sand and the sun. That's what you spend all day. And so for 40 years, they managed to walk around in the desert eating nothing else.
Well, that's okay. That's an interpretation. That's not what actually the scripture says, though. The ones he had them eat.
Which scripture are we talking about here, Baldini? Because I'm talking about the Jewish scriptures.
That's what I'm talking about. That from the Jewish scripture, what it says that happened is he did get fairly butthurt about it, and he broke those 10 commandments. The burning bush is a different story than the mountain, but that's okay. But he was rather butthurt at them, and those who did it, they did grind up the golden calf into powder, mixed it with water, made them drink it, and they died. And they died horribly, apparently. So apparently they threw up black stuff. I can find you the description.
Black goo?
Yeah, black goo, apparently, yeah.
What?
If you want to get into that, yeah.
Now that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's more interesting. It's even more interesting than snorting Peruvian marching powder. They threw up they threw up the black goo and died on the spot. Like so. I can find it. It's in Exodus. So I don't know if you want me to look while we're here and give you the story, but it is interesting. I'll take a look while you're.
Ormus could be something that could help us expel our negative. Whatever you want to call black goo.
I was pulling out of it, were these people so horribly corrupted at that point? The ones that were were they so horribly corrupted?
Well, what had happened? I mean, again, as the story goes, that they, he was, God showed up and was trying to hook up with them and say, "Hey,
Wasn't God? It's never God. It's always Metatron in those stories. That's one of the biggest things that people don't want to put in there is that according to them, they can't talk to God. Even they need angels to be intercessors. So because the vibration's too high, it would explode your brain and melt your face and all that shit. So
that'd be awesome.
Came down and said, "Yeah,
bring it."
I was just saying,
it's always an angel that they're dealing
without getting into
so these people worship angels.
Without getting into again our interpretations of it, I was just going to say what it actually says, and that's the interesting part. Everybody's gets to interpret it as they want. I'm just going to say the story goes that they. That this is how the story goes, right? So let's see, it's Exodus 32, if I'm not mistaken here.
So while you're finding that, should I tell my story about the sun and consciousness?
Yeah,
also?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I had one more question. Well, I'm going to look for this. I have one more question, though. So with the monatomic gold and being in a harmonic situation with the sun, this is kind of what I was kind of making my brain go quiver, is so we're looking at a harmonic sympathy in a similar way that I would see, for example, um, gematria working, right? Where numeric values and words that have similar numeric values are sort of sympathetic to one another.
Right.
So that they're not directly connected, but there's a tangential connection because of the interconnectedness of all things. And so they're sort of at a similar sympathetic frequency, such that it kind of works out. And that's how the sort of gematria thing works when you have other words with similar numeric values. Is that what am I smelling what we're stepping in here? Is that what
I found that fascinating. I'm not sure where that ties into anything I said.
Well, that's what I thought you were getting to, though, is that basically that the sun, the monatomic gold draws the sun, and so it's basically a solid version of the sun, and so I'm looking at it and going from my perspective and the interconnectedness of all things, that everything is touched to another thing, and then there are different frequency rates, and those that are harmonic with each other are going to manifest similar aspects.
Yeah,
right.
It's just a harmonic correspondence.
Right, exactly. Harmonic resonance. Exactly. Great way to put it. And this is how I view the Lindsay, you'd be better able to tell me because you do the tarot. But this is how I kind of view the way the tarot and the I Ching, tea leaves, reading entrails, all sort of works. Is that they're going to vibrate along with a certain frequency of manifest whatever's happening there. And those who are adept at sort of reading the way those things fall can get kind of a little peek around the corner, a little pulling back of the veil. That's how I see it. Would you say that's accurate?
I'd say
that's
so.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay, so that's just how I sort of see it, and so I'm trying to gather this information. As that was what you said, Ben, was the gold thing with the frequency of the sun. That's kind of what put me on that tangent there. So anyway, food for thought. Back. So now tell me your experience.
I love that because that helps people visualize and understand how it all connects together.
Now I'm going to look for the black goo. Go ahead.
Okay, so we're talking about the sun and maybe all of the celestial bodies as a possible consciousness in itself. And so I may have told this story before, but I was one day looking for something random to do. I had never before used Facebook events as like a way to find something in that area to go do, but I had some time to kill, so I went in there. And something that popped up was like this spiritual expo. And I was like, I don't know, those things are like kind of hokey and dumb, but like, I don't know, maybe. And then it was like 1 mile away. I was like, oh, I could literally walk there in like 10 minutes and just check it out and see. So I was like, okay. So I walk down totally on a whim to this place. I go in. A series of intense synchronicities leads me to this booth, and this guy is there. And like it's the whole like sort of Celestine prophecy thing. Like you make eye contact with someone from across the room, you should probably go like talk to them or figure it out, and that sort of stuff, as well as other things. So I'm talking to him, and he has some orgone, and I'm like, I don't know, this just kind of just seems like bullshit to me, and whatever. And he's like, well, let me show you. And he like does some things that I'm kind of like, wow, that's actually pretty impressive. Anyway, I look down all of a sudden because he also has books at his booth, and I see this book, and then I remember that I had this dream last night, and that book was in the dream, and I was like, weird. And he was like, what? And I was like, that book. And he was like, what? And I was like, I had a dream about it last night. And he's like, oh, I brought it for someone, but I didn't know who, and it's you. So he brought it. So he sells books.
Out of here.
Yeah. So he sells books, but he doesn't have this book in stock. This is just a book he was told to like pick up and bring to give to someone, and that he would find out who, and it was me. So this book is like the worst thing for someone like me because I fucking hate the Beatles. I'm sorry to everyone who I offend right now. I hate the Beatles. I was overdosed on the Beatles for years, and I just can't take them anymore. So I don't like them. I do like them. I get it. I like the White Album and shit, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the Beatles in general have like a bad taste for me. And the book was John Lennon's afterlife thing. And I'm also very skeptical of people who claim to channel. I'm very skeptical of people who claim to like interact with people after they die. So I'm like, this book is just like bullshit to me. And I'm like, oh God, like, why did I have this dream? Because now I have to read the book. Like I have to, because that's fucking weird. So other crazy shit happened that whole expo, and I go home. I'm reading the book, and the part in the book that like hit me the most or struck me the most and had the most synchronicities at that time in my life when I got to it was that the sun was a conscious being, and that the sun was basically like trying so hard to just like connect with people on Earth and the consciousnesses on Earth to keep them from kind of like falling off into the abyss and to keep people like connected to the sun. And it just like, I guess that struck me, and that story is really fucking weird. And it got me started at that time thinking that maybe the sun is like a living being up there, whatever else it is. So that's my story about the sun and consciousness.
I like it. And it kind of goes back to, I had a similar experience. And the reason I think it's a sentient being is, as I was doing my walking meditation, I just felt compelled to look at the sun, and that started being just a daily, call it a ritual, I guess. If I wouldn't do it, you know, like maybe I'm listening to Higher Side, or I'm you know, just grooving out to music or something to where I don't do it, I noticed the rest of my day was a little bit off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like less present.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it was a lot. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. A lot more superficial, and I would just get into a lot more mundane, dumb shit, and not really do anything that's, you know, honoring my highest self.
Yes.
So I think that you might remember this. I sent you a text message, and it was like early morning, because it was like one of my sunrise walking meditations where I'd really been going into it with the intention of, are we in an enclosed system or not?
You were asking a question from the sun. Yeah,
totally. I mean, totally. Like at that point, I felt like, you know, we were communicating, and yeah, I got kind of in a trance, and I was like, threw that out there to the universe, like, help me understand, like, what am I involved in? Where am I at? Where do I stand in this realm? That kind of shit. And I got a very definitive answer back, like, this is an enclosed system. I still don't understand it. I couldn't draw it out on a map for you, but I feel very strongly in my core that as I understand the universe right now, sun, moon, earth, we're all in one enclosed system. Everything beyond that, I know they're lights. I know that everything that NASA puts out to tell me this is what Mars looks like is bullshit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I know what I can see with my naked eye, which is there's lights in the sky, and they're beautiful and luminous and whatnot. But beyond that, I can't tell you much.
I'd buy that for $1.
Well, like that, and that is definitely evidence that the sun has a consciousness if you can ask it a question and it can respond to you.
And again, you know, maybe that's just my higher self speaking to me. I don't know, but I do know that I was so certain after that particular meditation that I felt like I no longer have that question.
Yeah.
So we have 4 votes for luminaries as sentient beings, or at least just the sun.
At least the sun. But again, I'll tell you this, when I go out at night, I'm often looking at the moon, and I'm compelled to do it. Like if I was just standing up there talking to somebody and there's a full moon, at some point when the conversation is a lull, I'm going to stare at the moon because something just tells me that's what I should be doing.
I have never considered the moon. So I would guess I would need time to like sit with that and go try to interact with the moon to find out what I think about it. I'm kind of wary of the moon. I kind of wonder if it's like a fake, you know, not even fake, but like an object that was brought into place to like help control or something. And I'm just wary
it's
of
a
it.
lesser light. So,
I don't trust it.
It's described as a lesser light. So I would consider the sun to be probably more valuable to us, but I don't know. When you're outside and it's a full moon, that's something impressive. I mean, it draws your eye to it, so there must be some value there.
Yeah.
Why the fuck would it be so glorious?
Right.
I will say that without the sun, no life is possible. Everything, the entire food chain, all relies on the sun. Even the creatures in the deepest, darkest sea, they rely on cast off and dead things to fall down from the top, which live on algae, which is chlorophyll and photosynthesis, and that's everything in the sea, everything on land, everything requires the sun to give it life. So you know, from my perspective, the idea of people that worship the sun and venerated it, that's not a big stretch to see that the sun brought life, and during the wintertime when the sun seemed further away, things died. Doesn't seem too big a stretch that they would be you know, into it. but certainly from a physics standpoint, even without the esoteric woo, and then you just keep adding to it with the esoteric woo, but there's definitely nothing can survive without the presence of the sun. That's for sure.
That is for sure.
So the
source of
idea
all
of
life.
doing chemtrailing to cover it up is it's like mass murder.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. On the one hand, we finally get evidence that, or proof, or however you want to say it, that chemtrails are real, which you can feel maybe good about, except now you know that they're going to like step it up. If they're announcing it to the world that they're going to use chemtrails to block out the sun for global climate change, then it's going to get worse. And it's already so bad.
Interject something real quick. Like,
Yeah.
how is it that like we get these articles like the Bill and Melinda Gates fucking asshole foundation are going to start blocking out the sun? Who voted for that shit?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
does that ever come up on the fucking
To
ballot?
change the world.
They just got to do it. They just got to go do it.
Like, what the fuck? Like, who the fuck are these people that they're going to take out the one thing that we know will sustain life for this earth?
I mean,
They're going to obfuscate it? Fuck you.
when is any type of thing like that's never gotten voted on? Like,
no, but like, do you believe the nerve of those motherfuckers to even tell us that?
When the train came along, what did they do? They had the fucking Pinkertons come along and mass murder homesteaders because the government don't want no part of it. Never mind, no Pinkertons ever got arrested. For that shit.
No, they said it was a fucking crazy engines and fucking did it.
Exactly.
Right. So the government always has an agent to do their dirty work.
But it's like
somebody else.
It's something like satanic or dark or however you want to describe this. Like it's evil to go block out the sun. To put this much fucking effort into it is insane.
It's
You're
murder.
like
I mean,
worldwide.
It's killing all life on this. It's an attempted murder at all life on the planet.
Yeah.
Hey, who has watched that? Did any of you guys watch that Eat the Sun documentary? I know you were trying to see it, Ben. Did you get a chance?
I was trying. I didn't ever get to. I was trying my damnedest to get to it.
All right. Well, I'll get to the good part. There's this guy, and I don't remember his name, but he's a Middle Eastern fellow, white-haired dude, and you've probably seen him because he's pretty prolific if you've ever done any sun gazing videos on YouTube, or at least back in the day before it was totally fucked. But he's a older cat. Like I would guess he's in his 70s. Pretty fit dude. Like he looks in really good shape. But supposedly in India and in the United States and in Canada, as a matter of fact, universities have not held him captive, but they've had doctors on staff that the largest study was 440 days that they kept this guy.
He was a breatharian?
The breatharian?
No, he was a sun guy.
Sun.
He feels that his sustenance comes from the sun, and he was allowed water, tea, black coffee, and buttermilk. And for 440 days, that was it. That and the sun. And they would put him up to EKGs and all this bullshit just to make sure that he wasn't, in fact, killing himself.
If it was my coffee, I could understand
it. Well, here's my point is, can you imagine if, because, mind precedes everything.
Yep.
I can't look at the sun and have that be my sustenance because I don't believe it. But if I were raised to think that, hey, it's, if you gaze at a certain time and with a certain intent that'll give you all the energy you're going to need, and you can go without a few meals because that's got you covered, much like it does a plant. Well, it makes all the sense in the fucking world that like some people that weren't raised with the same stigmas as us just know that. And this guy hadn't eaten solid food in 440 days. And as someone that's drinking tea and coffee and buttermilk, I mean, that wouldn't get it done for me. But he's sustained life for well over a year just on that.
Well, I think much like sun gazing, you couldn't just slip into it.
That's what I'm saying. The sun can give us what we need, but we're not told that. As a matter of fact, we're told the opposite. Like, hey, don't.
And then it's taken away from us.
You're going to get cancer. Yeah, and then on top of that, in case free thinkers would stumble into it, they're going to fucking spray all this bullshit in the sky to where I'm almost certain that chemtrails, that one of the main tenets of them doing that is so that people can't get nourishment from the sun that they would otherwise be able to get.
Or information So
because I think that my suspicion is that the sun is sentient, and in order for me to sustain myself off of it, I have to recognize it as a source of sustenance. If I can recognize it and dial into it, it can provide for me.
Because think about this too.
But people won't do that because they don't even have a fucking idea to do that. They think if they look at the sun, they're going to go blind.
Yeah.
But if you looked at it like a source of something that can sustain your life, it probably could.
And like, so information can also be sent through light, allegedly or whatever. So it's like, it can give you information. It can give you a conscious connection. It can give you possibly like actual sustenance and literally life, whether or not you look at it that way. And that's what they're trying to block out. Think about like, if they plan to put us into some sort of situation where we're in like a, in like camps or whatever, where they're like starving us out. Yeah. Then like we could like maybe transmit maybe that's gonna be the best meetup we ever have, is when we're in the FEMA camp.
Right, it'll be the most populated one for sure.
Yeah,
right, exactly. The cool kids are hanging out.
But yeah, that'd be a good way to tamp down any possible insurrection or rebellion at that time, is to not have the sun accessible.
Well, and imagine like all those people in Africa and places where we feel like people are in like abject poverty. If they could get sustenance from the sun, all that shit goes away. Much like the free energy, like we know it's there. I mean, fuck, I watched this documentary from 2008 and it was talking about solar power, and they're like, within 5 years we'll be totally off oil and gas. Okay, well, it's fucking almost 2020. Guess what, man? Like, the interests of the elites overcame what was good for the masses.
Yeah, they won't stop selling oil until it's no longer profitable to do so. Well,
the funny thing is, though, again, it's PBS, but 2008 PBS. So they were saying, hey, by 2013, I mean, they just keep kicking the can down the road. They're like, 5 years from now, people won't even remember this documentary came out. And they're right. No one demands better.
They keep kicking that can down the road in all sorts of things, from going back to the moon to going to Mars to climate change to aliens coming. It almost seems as if they keep expecting something to happen that doesn't, and they're waiting, so they keep having to kick it down the road as though they're being deceived as well, right? They keep expecting something to go down, and it's just a little bit longer, a little bit longer, because the desperation I sense doesn't seem to be the desperation that we're waking up and we know. It seems to be that they're not. I don't know. I keep my finger on the pulse of it, and it just seems like they keep kicking that can in such a way that it's everything, right? It's not just the climate change. It's all their little tails. It's like, yeah, well, next week. Okay, just next week.
You know what I think a lot of it is that we're all in this fucking hamster wheel, and we're barely getting by. Like some people are more comfortable than others, but no one really is so comfortable they can really ponder things. I mean, like if we all just had a rich uncle that died and we all just had an extra couple $100,000 in the bank, we could actually.
Lindsay was going to win $1 million.
$80
million.
Imagine if we could just take a pause and be like, Space Force? Do we fucking need Space Force? like if the masses just rose up like an all one unified voice, been like, dude, fuck your Space Force. Like, no, like put that money back into like decent things for decent folks.
Let's just
and people
not
that need shit.
give them our money.
Just like fuck you. And like NASA, no, dude, NASA's closed. Fuck you, and fuck you, Elon Musk. And
it's a great thought.
Fuck you, Virgin Galactic. Like all these just money suckholes. Like fuck, it's over with. Like enough's enough.
It's a great thought. I go through it over and over that there's so many more of us than there are of them, but the logistics of it and the way people are makes it extremely unlikely. I don't want to be the turd in the punch bowl. It's just people are broken, and so they all the way up the line. Everybody wants something, right? So those next down, if they're promised that they'll get a little something and be over the next guy, they're willing to do horrible things to be the next guy up the ladder. So the people with the power are doling it out, and it seems hard to get enough people to do it at once.
This is why that avenue of like trying to get people all together on something to stop something or any of that is usually a dead end. But like you can measure this, you can test it out, is if you have a group of people that have sort of a higher. Like if us four were hanging out somewhere and someone came up and they were like violent feeling or seeming, their violence would be like tamped down just by our presence. Whereas if they then walked into a group of people who was opposite of us and was like really like fucking full of their demons all the time or whatever, then that person's violence would come out. And so
absolutely
your direct, engendering of your own consciousness and bringing that forth into the world, like literally does change the world. And that's
I totally agree.
The best way.
I say over and over that it's almost impossible to go change the world, but you can change the world around you, and then if
and
you
it's not like a
that,
pussy cop out thing. It's like it literally affects the whole world, and you cannot get to the next state without that.
I'm convinced it's the only way, because if you can manifest that and influence the world around you, and then the next person does the next person, that's the only way. You're not going to do it from the top down, and that's what because somebody's already got that locked up, right? They've already got the top down locked up. And the only way that I see to do it is from the bottom up. And that is really, and now you're going to get really corny, is love, right?
Love.
That's the only thing that really substantially affects and changes people.
But it's not
outside.
It's not like a love and light bullshit thing either, though, because I always want to point out, if some fucker is about to like chop off a baby's head with an axe across the street, I love that baby enough to kill that fucker.
Yeah, well, letting the guy do that to the baby would not be expressing love, right? So I mean,
love can be violent.
That's the most difficult thing, I think, to
I violently love you.
No, I think that's the most difficult thing as I grow to understand how love expresses itself in this circumstance. Knowing that it needs to be love is, to me, a given, but understanding how mature love expresses itself under these circumstances, that's where the difficult part, and that's what takes, I think, wisdom, is to understand how is it going to express itself here, because the circumstances keep getting more difficult.
Yeah.
And I keep seeing this up here on the chat screen. I wanted to ask, maybe. Oh, go ahead. I just saw.
It's just as it should be. It's just as it should be, though. You study enough.
Agreed.
You study enough culture and enough religions and theologies and everything else. You start noticing these cycles. And I can pick this same exact cycle out in so many different cosmologies that it's not even funny, including the use of essence against us. That just shows that we're in the high feminine time. And during the high feminine time, you hate the high feminine. And during the high masculine time, you hate the high masculine. But currently we're in the high feminine. We're getting ready to switch over on the great cycle. And so this is the way things need to be, because right before the switch over, when the feminine reaches its epitome to where it crystallizes, then we need to be completely lacking our masculine power. But the trick in that is that it also, in all those cosmologies, whether it's Uranus using his essence to lock up the Titans and then ends up putting them in Tartarus, or whether you're talking about the Aesir binding the children of Loki, the Titans, the Titan Fenrir, binding him with essence, no matter which case we're talking about, the genitals or the masculine of that etheric beings gets removed, where Kronos removed the genitals of Uranus. With heathen cosmology, Fenrir bites off the hand of Tyr, who is the phallic god, and he bites off the sword arm. Now, when you flip things over and you look at...
Dude, wait. He bit his dick off?
Yeah.
There's so much Kronos, dicks and sex and all these.
and then, well, what it is that's the masculine. So whether you want to take and put a sexualness to it or not, because then when you turn around, now right then we're at the high feminine. So everything's lost its masculine power. So in all of these cosmologies, when the return of the king or the return of the masculine or the spring after the winter or the return of the sun after the night, it's almost always represented then by the fixing of a sword, pounding together the pieces of the sword, and that's what brings that together in heathen cosmology. That was
so is the sun's masculine?
Right now, yes.
But it changes. Like I know, like the moon is La Luna, like that's feminine.
Right. Right now, the sun is masculine.
The sun goes either ways.
Well, it switches at the end of the cycle.
After enough drinks, it'll get into a three-way.
Right. Then it'll do the devil's
Mercury watches in the corner.
Gay for pay.
You're right. Mercury watches in the corner and masturbates, and Venus
tells everybody about it.
Well, that's Venus.
Uranus just winks at everybody.
Yeah, Uranus. Everybody wants Uranus.
Uranus just winks at everybody.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Cost extra.
Nice. Well
Uranus
done,
costs extra.
So
the rabbit hole is extra. That's right.
So I just wanted to mention that everything that Ben was just describing is what this book's about, Sine Curve of Aeon. So if you're into that, read it.
I was going to throw out there that I keep seeing GBE Media had a question about what do you guys think about, does the moon reflect the sun's light?
No, I think
No.
the moon reflects the Earth's light. If the moon reflected the sunlight, then I would get amperage on my solar panels at night when the moon is out. But it does not. I get voltage.
You don't think it's its own source of light?
I think that it's a symbiosis. I think that it's a cathode anode situation that we got going on. I think the moon creates the voltage and the sun's creating the amperage.
Brett, what do you think?
Well, I've never heard that word before, so I can't really contribute much. But I'll tell you this though. You've
never heard moon?
No, I've shot the moon, as a matter of fact. But no, cathode anode, like I don't even know what that means. But I'll tell you this. We're gonna go in a whole different direction. So I live in Dallas, Texas, and there's a thing called the Katy Trail, and it's 3.5 miles, and it goes from downtown to uptown. And it's beautiful, right? But the trees make a canopy. So if you can picture that, like these crepe myrtles, they reach at the top. It's like you're walking through a cave almost.
Yep.
But in the light of day, it's certainly nothing like a cave. But there's places where you can stop and sun gaze, and it's not designed for sun gazing. But there's just places like where the trees open up and you can stop, and if you're so inclined, when the sun comes up, you can look at it. And I just wanted to mention this because this is a true thing that I've experienced firsthand, and I want to share it with friends that would be perhaps like-minded and might want to look into this. What I've noticed is if I sun gaze, when there's about 3 or 4 spots on the trail where you can do it for minutes at a time, and people are going to walk by you and think you're a weirdo, but as long as you're secure in yourself, you don't mind that, then do your sun gazing. But when I would turn back and look at the trail, this is a very unique phenomenon, and I'd be interested to see what y'all think of this, because I've tried it enough times to where I know it's a real thing. When I look back onto the trail, the ground and the trees that form the canopy, they show up just a split second before anyone else on the trail. And not only that, but the person closest to me on the trail might not be the first person I see. I might see like the 3rd or 4th person closest to me, and then everyone shows up.
That's a real thing.
And it's a quick thing that happens, but it is, in fact, I see the background before anyone shows up, and then the people don't show up necessarily in order of closest to furthest from them.
Proximity, right? Yeah, no, it's a perception thing. Yeah,
pretty far
it's a real
how
thing.
That works.
It's a real thing. It has to do with your perception and the way your senses work. But yes, it's a real thing. Yeah,
well, it's weird that you, or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just retarded. But the fact that like I would see like the background before people show up. I was like, wow,
it actually makes sense. It's it's psychology, but I mean it's physiology and psychology and neurology all put together. But it has to, it's perception. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not woo, but it because the way your brain works is it's trying to make sense of your surroundings constantly, and your senses, all your sight and sound and touch, all arrive at different times, and it takes a second to put it all together. So we perceive the world a split second behind. So it's about 0.33 seconds. That's another show up of that number. But it's
the weird part though is like why would I see someone that's like 20 feet from me before I see someone that's like 8 feet from me?
Because you notice them. You're aware. It's your awareness of them. Proximity is not necessarily the key indicator index.
And so I'm just going to say this goes back to my thing where anybody can see auras, because really it's your awareness of it is just blunted out. You've years ignored it so much that you just can't see it. But if you pay attention and you practice, it comes back.
That's why I think some people are more sensitive to unseen presences as well. If you're aware of it and you focus on it, sometimes you're more aware of it than others, and sometimes they make themselves more aware than others.
And you can develop that.
Yes.
I think there's something, and here's a fucking Wu-Tang Clan. Here's a real woo-woo thought, is when I'm in deep meditation, in a walking meditation, I can be almost in a trance, because all I have to do is like one foot in front of the other. You go 3.5 miles and you turn around, right? Like you don't have to use a lot of your cognitive skills. So I can get into pretty deep trance when I'm walking on Katy Trail. And what I notice is if I'm just losing myself in a trance, dogs will come up to me to where the owners have to pull them away. And it's almost like they're like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
what is this energy?
Like, does this guy have like treats in his pocket? Like, why are these dogs like on this? But that's what it is. Like, if I've just got off the phone, yeah, if I just got off the phone, or I'm not really present, dogs don't give a fuck. But like when I'm really dialed in, and it seems like the canine universe kind of is like, hey, this guy gets it. I feel like they're
he's finally fully here.
And back to kids I feel like too.
They're kind of dialed into it.
Yeah,
exactly. I think the same thing.
Say with kids too. Their kids are weirdly attracted to me. They want to. They will always smile and pay attention to me, and even their parents are like, right? What? I'm like, hey, I'm not a perv, but like you said, Brett, especially when I'm walking and I'm not really paying attention to them, right? I'm kind of meditating, and especially, and if I'm focused on work or trying to figure out a problem or in a bad mood or whatever, that doesn't manifest. So I do think that those who are aware, it's like the canine kingdom or the children before they've been told not to, right? Especially like toddlers and below, they respond. They know, I don't know what the difference between good and bad. I mean, it's often said, it's like I don't trust people who don't like dogs, but I definitely trust dogs who don't like people.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Like if a dog acts shitty towards me, I check myself.
Yeah.
I don't think the dog's an asshole. I think I must be putting out some kind of an asshole vibe. Like, what's going on with me? And 9 times out of 10, it's usually like I'm focused on something that's not good. Like I'm being envious, or I'm like pissed off that like something didn't happen as quick as I wanted it to. So like I'm just not being my best self.
And another bit of synchronicity just occurred to me is that woo upside down is om.
Wu-Tang Clan.
So just if you flip it over, so there's.
I love it. So I guess we'll start to wrap it up now, and I'm going to remind people about a few things while you guys consider what you want to say about your final takes on the sun and your final words of wisdom to people. But I just want to remind people that you can now buy merch on the page, rogueways.org. You can order my book, Sine Curve of Aeons. You can get a tarot reading if you're into that. It's very accurate and highly helpful. It's almost like therapy. It's like cheap therapy if that's what you want. And you can enter to win this painting.
Lens,
yes.
Put it back this way. Like I can see the colors first. Yeah, there you go. You can see the color difference a little bit more. Man, not that far, you goofball. Yeah, like that. I can see like the.
And maybe you
should start. Here, let me see if this helps.
Maybe you should start calling it therapy.
Therapy. It's true. You can kind of see it. Even now,
you can see it's a different
out.
color, like from that side to that side. Yeah.
It sucks that you can't see it as well as it is. But you can enter to win this by emailing me at corysharman@gmail.com with any sort of entry, including buying merch or sharing the page.
Are we eligible?
You're all eligible. Sasha just won this book, actually, which I'm going to mail out to her tomorrow because the drawing was yesterday, and so Sasha won. And the drawing for all the people who have entered or will enter for the painting will be on the 1st. So that is my reminder. So final thoughts. What do you guys think? Who wants to start?
Come on, one of you bald guys start.
Yeah, bald guys go first. Respect our elders.
Well, then that's got to be Baldini.
I don't know if that's true. Like
it would be.
I might be older than Ben. I think I'm not sure.
I'm only 28. So
I'm probably the oldest one here. So
Lindsay's 28. Okay, I'm older.
It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah,
Add
definitely
10.
not.
Add 10.
I got kids that old. Like,
I do have a daughter older than Lindsay. So there's
nice.
Older than 38?
No, sorry.
I'm not actually 28, but thank you for believing me. That's very kind.
I was like, you're wise for your years.
No, just 38.
All right. Okay, I guess if we're going oldest first. So yeah, the sun. It's enigmatic. It's probably one of the most enigmatic and fascinating elements in our world. And from it comes the source of all life, in terms of nothing could survive without it. So as I said earlier, it's no surprise to me that most ancient cultures venerated it in some way. I'm a person who, I'd say believes, it's a weird word, but I have, experience with it or whatever. So the way I see it is that there is a creator, and then the sun is a creation, so I don't I don't worship the creation. I worship the creator, if we're looking at that aspect. But it is a source of all life, and it's a fascinating, and my take on it is that anything the controllers tell us to stay away from, we should definitely look into. And certainly with the sun gazing idea, again, while I haven't been practicing it, I'm very intrigued with it, and was, as I said, compelled as a child to look into it. So I'll probably be looking more into that. But I will say it's good for you. I know that we have been separated from nature in every possible way to such an extent that most people, I mean, we live in cities. We don't see anything natural, even close. We wear things on our feet to keep us from touching the ground. We want to stay inside and in air conditioning and away from nature. And if we get dirt under our nails or even encounter an animal that we're not familiar with, oh, gross! I got something on me, a worm. Oh my God! So we're separated from it. So I just say the natural course. The closer you can get to nature, and if you subscribe to the idea that there's a creator, all things are representative of that. They all, to me, do share a similarity and a harmonic frequency, if you will, that to me, all things do connect and are touching one another. And so I'll go back to that love thing and just say, for me, the idea of harming something else intentionally, again, brings those consequences back around. So I'm going to try to put out the best that I can in terms of love. But when it comes to the sun, I'm going to say love rules there too. We say the sunshine of my heart, or you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. We equate some of those things, and I think that's a positive, and it gives us warmth and light. And if you haven't yet looked into it, I'd just say, if you haven't opened your mind to the possibility that the world isn't what you've been told in terms of our cosmology and that sort of stuff, take a look into it. From my perspective, they're lying about everything, history, everything. But if you can shake your mind to that and learn to see things in a new way, you might begin to see auras. You might begin to see the sun in a different way, and yourself in a different way, and other people in a different way, and the world around you in a way that is indicative and allows you to shine like the sun. So there you go.
Nice. Baldini. Hey, if I could throw a couple things out here about the sun, I can say that for all the people watching this or people that are going to watch this that have maybe only believed things that they were taught in school, and you might start just getting that pang that something ain't quite right. When you start looking into things, I will say the sun was a big bridge for me to appreciate nature. When I was in high school, my parents took me to Florida, my brother and I, one Christmas. And I was such a horny teenager. I was mad that I had to be with my girlfriend and stuff, but like the parties and stuff that were going on. So I didn't enjoy it. And now that I'm older, I realize that nature, our connection to nature is something really magical. And if you think about taking a seed and putting it in the ground, and the sun works with us, and next thing you know, you have something that you can eat, and that provides you sustenance and stuff. The sun is magical. The sooner you get cool with it, the better. And I started doing weird things that I still do, like weird practices now that I didn't used to do that sound ridiculous. But I can tell you, when I go on my walks, there's certain trees that when I see branches that hang away, I'll give them a high five, or I'll squeeze on a branch, or I walk past it and like I'm exchanging my energy to that. Game recognized game. And I'll tell you, man, this life can be a lonely place sometimes for a woke person. So when you connect to nature, it kind of gives back, and it makes you feel like, you're doing the right thing. Like sometimes going against the grain and learning the hard truths is what we're here to do. And, keep on learning, keep on trying, keep on loving the sun loves you.
Right on.
And that's it.
I love it. All right, Ben, bring us home.
So for me, cosmic, the sun is the high masculine, and right now, so this is a very important thing, but it's only just as important as the high feminine, because the sun's going to speed things up, and then the moon's going to slow them down. Like, this is the way it's supposed to work. There's a beautiful symbiosis, and it's absolutely needed. Like I said, I think this flips from time to time. We have a time period where Saturn was considered the sun, and a progression, and we have all kinds of cultures where it flips, but no matter what we're looking at, the sun is what's speeding things up, and then then on the other side it's slowing down. That's where you're getting your masculine power. So it's a beautiful thing no matter how you're looking at it, and yeah, can't
all
live
praise
without
the
it.
sun.
My power all day comes from it. My plants grow from it. You go for a week with just rain, and then the sun comes out for a day. All the animals are running around, the birds are chirping, and everything's just happy and joyous. Literally vitamin D coming from the sun.
Hey,
Yes.
if I could throw in this real quick, and this is based on that documentary Eat the Sun. There was a doctor, probably like one of the few honest doctors, that said if you look at a multivitamin and they say what the recommended dosage of vitamin D is, they're like, if you walked out in the sun without a shirt for 1 hour, you get 10 times as much vitamin D as what the USDA says that we should get for a daily dose. It's like, yeah,
Wow.
how is that? It's like, vitamin D that's life. Like, that's
Yeah.
something that we need, and that's something that we thrive from.
Most people are critically low on it.
Big time. I just thought that was interesting. And also, if you don't mind me saying, I appreciate being on the show tonight because you guys are three of the brightest minds that I've ever met, and I'm so pleased to hear your ideas, and it's awesome just to be peers with y'all.
Back
Cheers.
at you.
It's
been awesome.
fantastic. Hats
Fun
off
talking
to
to you
you,
guys.
Brett. Hats off to you, brother.
So
Thank you, brother.
I'm going to say that there's a reason why there's many practices around the world that specifically focus on the rising sun. And part of that is because if you think about the qualities of a rising sun, it's that it's bringing you newness and freshness and vitality and life that's like thrusting out into the day, right? And that, the scientific method at its basic, at its most core level, asks you to always be willing to check yourself and look at new data and look at new experiences and update your understanding of things. And so that's going to be my final thought about the sun, is that think about that rising sun state of mind and way of being and focus on that as well, aside from just sun gazing in the morning at the rising sun. Keep that as like
which is when the light is orange. In the morning, the light is orange, where the sun and masculine and feminine are mixed. In the afternoon, you have the blue sun. That's the one they tell you to stay away from.
Huh.
And then in the evening, you have the orange sun again. And this matches. In the spring, you have orange. In the fall, you have orange. In the summer, you have blue.
So keep that mentality as a symbolic sort of thing that you're focusing on and embodying as you go through your day. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to Brett. Brett, thank you for being here tonight.
Wu-Tang forever, baby.
Forever. According to Ben. Ben, thank you for being here, brother.
It was an honor. You guys are all the best. I'm honored to be on with Baldini and honored to be on with Brett. And I always love you, Lindsay.
And I get to hug you soon. And according to
Yes.
Baldini, thank you for coming today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. And
Pleasure.
I love hanging out with Ben and Brett.
Hey, we'll do it again sometime.
Good times.
Your
BB&B.
world...
Yes.
Your world is more than you are meant to believe it to be. Your environment is an intricate set of phenomena and characteristics, and each aspect affects your being. You are interconnected fundamentally, deeply, and profoundly with all that surrounds you, and the sun is one of the most powerful entities you exist in connection with. Take some time to commune with the source of all life and find out what it's been waiting to tell you. Which pieces of yourself have you forgotten, left off in the vast distance of trauma and memory? Your main purpose in life is to reconnect to that source, cutting straight through the pain as your bravest and strongest self, to reunite the two halves of you, once split asunder, now mended back into one unified whole. And the sun is your best ally in that process. Until you reunite your twin selves, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
You're the best, Lindsay.
You are.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt.
How do we know it's over?
Vibes manifested
Yeah.
to words that told me search for verbs.
We're all just sitting here staring.
Where's
Where's the credits at?
Work more than one can speak. While the tongue beats a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth. And spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the solitude. A place where the god gets food is sorcery. To recreate the god forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Henio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me, yo?
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional 3 ain't meeting me on top of the 4th. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branched down. Try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasp hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking
run.